Quick disclaimer, this video will probably piss off a bunch of people, mainly real devs, the people who've watched my last video and thought they've discovered the zero-shot prompt for building complex full-stack web applications, and maybe the people who commented under my last video that the way I plan my project is complete and utter BS. And to those people I have to say, you're right, at least kind of. Let me explain. For those of you who don't know, my last video is currently the most watched video on my channel, and it gave a lot of people new inspiration, some new ideas, which is great, but it also raised a lot of questions, some concerns, and gave me some valuable insights. One of which was this comment. This guy told me that he was happy for me that I was able to create a workflow for myself that would help me build my projects. But he also told me that I will probably at some point run into the same issues I talked about in the last video, which are that at some point, as the complexity of the project grows, those LLMs just start to behave weirdly, right? They will delete working code, whole files, or just in general do some weird. And I've experienced this in the project you're going to see in this video. Not so much as before, when I was just jumping into the project without any real plan whatsoever, but still. And this brilliant man I just talked about also pointed me to using knowledge graphs for creating proper project documentation. And to be honest, I still have to research this, but apparently there are some providers that offer a solution for this. I just have to learn how to use them. So was I able to build a small vidIQ clone with the workflow that I talked about in the last video? Yes. Was it smooth sailing and was I able to zero-shot prompt it? Hell nah. This video turned out to be around 4 hours, but what you see is the final edit. In reality, it took me more like 7.5, 8 to 8.5-ish hours, which is still decent for someone who barely knows how to code, but I thought you should know this. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. And as usual, if you like these videos or they help you just a little bit, please consider hitting the subscribe button and enabling the notification bell so I can finally become a YouTube millionaire, learn while getting paid, and continue to share my knowledge for free with you guys. Okay guys, I will quickly walk you through the prompting process I had to do in Bolt. In fact, I had to iterate 5 or 6 times on the design. And here's also where I realized some of the weaknesses of the design and front-end specs that I've created with the prompt chain in my last video. And for those of you who haven't seen the last video, I will link it at the top right or left of the screen. But please watch it after you watch this video, otherwise YouTube will think this current video is shit, and obviously this is not good for the channel. Okay, so thanks. So right from the beginning, I basically just pasted the design specs and the front-end spec that I've created with DeepSeek in the last video, as I've said. And I told Bolt, I will paste design specs and front-end specification for an app I'm trying to build. You play the role of an experienced designer and developer that has many years of experience when it comes to creating beautiful UX and UI optimized applications. Please build the front-end according to the plan, only the design. I don't need functionality because I will do this myself. And the first iteration that I ended up with was this. As you can see, this doesn't look too good, and this is why I also recognize some of the weaknesses of the front-end specs and design specs. They have to be a lot more precise for tools like Bolt. So I will definitely iterate on this, and I will probably make another video in the future about it. So as you can see, I have this weird looking chat window at the bottom right, kind of like a chat window that you would expect on an e-commerce website, right? And the card design, it looks nice as a first draft. Obviously the padding at the left side isn't quite right, and the buttons are without functionality. So I basically shot myself in the foot there because I told Bolt not to add functionality, and not to add functionality also includes not adding rerouting, right? So what I basically wanted to do is, if you click the generate ideas button, I wanted to be redirected to the ideas route. And there the user get AI generated titles immediately and can also search for another keyword and create more titles. It will become clearer in the next few minutes. So I went back to Bolt, and then I told it the following. So as a first draft, this looks decent. However, I don't need the chatting window at the bottom right. Instead, add this feature to the chat route. Also, the padding on the cards is off and the border margins of the app too. Please improve on that. I also don't need an analytics route in the nav bar because, again, this is also not precise enough in the front-end specs and design specs, because apparently we don't need an analytics route, right? What I mean by analytics is basically just displaying the key metrics of the videos, like subscriber count of the channel, view count, and the upload date. And then I told it, okay, please find a solution for what happens when I click the view transcript button or the generate ideas button. As I said, I kind of shot myself in the foot there because I told it specifically not to add functionality. For the generate ideas button, I kind of wanted to redirect to the ideas route. Please add it to the nav bar. In the ideas route, I need a tab view where it says daily ideas, saved ideas, dismissed ideas, and underneath are two sections that say video ideas and a list of ideas derived from the chosen video. And underneath that section is another one where it says customized ideas and a search bar underneath where the user can search for other keywords and directly generate new video title ideas. And what I would end up with was the second iteration. So as you can see, the padding at the top is still off here for the logo and the application name. The cards look much cleaner. We now have the video description, and the styling looks still a bit off, right? Because here we only have a headline that spans one line, and compared to the others where the headline spans two lines, which is why the buttons aren't as on the same height as with the other cards. And now if I would click the generate ideas button, I would be redirected to the ideas route where the user immediately gets 3 AI powered video ideas, so to speak, and also the customized ideas section. Now, as you can see, the input field looks kind of displaced, right? I wanted it to span the whole width from here to the left side, to the right side. And now we also have the chat functionality on the chat route, but as you can see, the input field also looks kind of displaced. But again, for the second draft, this is all right. So I went back to the drawing board in Bolt, and I said, okay, as a first draft, this looks decent. However, I don't need the chatting window. So then I went back to Bolt, to the drawing board, and I told it, okay, still a few things in the chat routing, and the margin of the input field is off, fix it. In the home content section of the card has a different height. Example, in full screen, the card on the right has a headline which spans only one line compared to the other cards having a headline that spans two lines. So this is this issue, right? And the last part is in the ideas route, I need the input field of the customized ideas section to span the whole container. Now, this was the result of that. As you can see here, Bolt decided to delete the button, but the input field now spans the whole width, so we'll have to give it that. The cards obviously look pretty clean. I was very satisfied with that, and the chat window also looks much better, but I kind of wanted the input field and the button to be inside of the chat card, if that makes sense. And I also wanted it to span the whole width of the card, right? Don't have this weird padding here left and right. So this is why I went back to Bolt once more, and I also asked it to add mobile responsiveness, because if I would shrink the window size, the content would overflow in the cards and it just wouldn't look good. So I told it to add the button back in the idea route in the customized ideas section, also fix the padding. And this basically did the trick. And then I was satisfied with the initial result. And then I told it, okay, I like the design, please leave it, but I need you to create an additional landing page for the app that the user sees before he logs in and gets redirected to the dashboard of the application. Then I told it a bit about the pricing strategy, what it should find in the heroes section. And also I gave it the colors once more, because as you can see, those drafts have no color highlights, it's just black and white. And this was what I ended up with. Sorry for the weird screenshot, but when I took that screenshot, I didn't have a Chrome extension, which basically gave me a scrollable screenshot, if that makes sense. So, I mean, as a first draft, again, for the landing page, this looks pretty neat. So we have the frequently asked questions, we have the pricing. Apparently, the cards look a bit off, right? So the get started button should be on the same height as the upgrade to Pro button. But other than that, it looks all right. So one problem was that Bolt decided to use the main application page for the landing page, which basically deleted this section here. So I had to tell it to revert the changes and to create a new route for the landing page. So it went ahead and did this. And then I decided to use the enhance prompt with AI button here in bold. And as you can see, it really enhanced the prompt. And this would give me this iteration, which, as you can see, looks much cleaner than what I was able to create with my prompt. Okay, so definitely use the enhance prompt with AI button in bold. Now, as you can see, we have a nice clean headline. We have the subheadline. Everything looks neat and basically just like a SaaS template, right, that you would see for other applications. So we have the loved by content creator section to add credibility to our application. Now the pricing page or pricing section looks much cleaner. We have the frequently asked question and the footer. But I didn't stop there. The last iteration was basically to tell Bold to update the styling of the rest of the application. So as you can see here, I once again used the enhance prompt with AI button, and this was what Bold was able to come up with. So create a cohesive design update for the application by create a cohesive design update for the application by implementing the following styling changes across the chat ideas and page routes, match the color scheme and visual elements from the landing page. And it basically went ahead and described exactly what need to be changed in order for the application to have a similar design as the landing page. And as you can see here, this is the current final result. This is live, by the way, so I hosted the application on Netlify. Again, it's just a dummy version, right? It doesn't do anything. It just looks all right, I guess. And now if the user clicks on get started for free, and now if the user clicks on, so also the redirections doesn't work. So if I click here, this page obviously doesn't exist. So I have to manually change the route for now to the root of the application, so to speak. And now, as you can see, the rest of the application has a similar design as the landing page with this purplish highlight color. If I click on generate ideas, this obviously looks also much cleaner with the background. So we have the saved ideas, dismissed ideas. Idea history still doesn't exist, so I will have to create this inside of Windsurf, but the chat window also isn't quite there yet. As you can see here, we have this weird black bar at the bottom. But again, this is not really that bad. We can just fix this inside of Windsurf. And now I will basically load this design into my project inside of Windsurf, and then we can finally start coding. And there are essentially two ways how you can do this. So you can head over to Bold and you can click the export button, download the project, and well, then you can just open the folder inside of Windsurf, or you click on open in StackBlitz. Then you will be redirected to StackBlitz, as you can see here. And you click on create a repository. For that, you have to link your GitHub account, right? So after you created the repository, you will see this repository on your GitHub, and then you can copy the Git repository URL to your clipboard, head over to Windsurf, and go into the directory where you want to clone the repo, and then you just write git clone, you paste the repo link, and then it will go ahead and create inside of Windsurf. And all you have to do then is to run npm. And all you have to do then is to run npm I, right, to install all of the dependencies that you're using in your project. And then you can do npm run dev, and this will basically run the application on your local host. And now you're ready to start coding with Windsurf. So before we start with the first step in the development process, which is setting up authentication, because I actually want the user to be able to create an account, log into the application, and maybe even store his search history for the different YouTube keywords, right? I asked Cascade, which is the AI feature inside of Windsurf, to analyze the documentation folder that you can see here with the different documents like API documentation, backend, and so on. And then based on this, create a new file called todos.md that you can see here. Let me increase the size a bit for you guys so that it's easier to read. Create a new file called todos.md where we list all of the different steps that we need to take in order to create the application, right? And the first draft of the to-dos file was okay, but Cascade didn't take into account that we already have a front end, right? We have different components like the chat interface, the header, the main nav, search bar, and so on. And we also have an app folder where we have the different routes. So for example, the chat route, the ideas route, and so on. And this is why the first draft of the to-dos file was kind of general, right? So for example, Windsurf listed things like create a basic layout for the application, but we already have this. So this is why I went ahead and told it to analyze the existing components and the app folder, and then basically improve the first draft of the to-dos file and enhance it with the new knowledge that it has gathered by analyzing those files. And now, as you can see, it says connect the existing user navigation component with Clerk, create a sign up and login pages, set up a Supabase project as the second step. And another thing that it added, for example, was we're using Zustand for the state management. And before that, it would only say configure Zustand store, but it wouldn't tell us what stores we need inside of our application. And if we have a look at the state management, you can see that we indeed have different stores. So for the chat, the ideas, and the videos, and so on. And after telling it to add those things, we can now find it in the to-dos file. Now, there are still some things that are a bit too much. So for example, we won't need a user preference store because we won't give the user the ability to change the settings, for example, for dark or light mode or any other settings really that you can think of. And there are also some other elements that is out of the scope of this video, because otherwise it will probably be like 6 or 7 hours long. For example, the performance optimization, or I mean, we will probably implement some of it, but testing and documentation is definitely out of the scope of this video. I've never done this, and I have no idea how to prompt the AI to write unit tests, right? So this is something I still have to learn myself. This is why I won't share it with you, because no idea. But overall, this is a good starting point, because we can use the to-dos that we can find inside of this file to create another file during the development process, which is the progress file, right? And inside of the progress file, we will basically store all of the features and the things we've done so far, so that we can, if we need to, give the AI even more context during the development process. And now let's start by adding authentication to the application. And for that, we need to head over to Clerk. Go to clerk.com and create an account. You can either log in with email and password, or can use your social accounts like Google. And then you will be redirected to a page that looks something like this. Okay, you can give your application a name. In my case, that's Tube Genius. And you can enable the different sign-in options you want to give your user. So we definitely want to give the user the ability to log in with email. And we also want him to have the option to log in with the social accounts. So Google, Facebook, and Apple. And basically, you could give him all of those different options, but, well, it's not really a good user experience if the user has, I don't know, 23 options to sign in, right? So this is why we will, for this example, only use Google, Facebook, and Apple. Then you hit create the application, and after that, you will be redirected to Clerk's setup guide. You basically can choose between the different frameworks, and then we need to do a few things. So, and keep in mind, you could do this with coding tools like Cursor or Windsurf or Pair or Z, or however many solutions there are out there right now. But in my experience, it's better to do this manually. First of all, with solutions like Clerk, it's not that hard. Basically, everything that you need to do is copy code from one place to the other and know where you can find certain code snippets in their documentation. So don't worry, I'm going to show you. And it also trains your muscle of understanding how the actual setup process for the authentication, at least when it comes to using libraries, is. I mean, setting up authentication from scratch is a whole different beast, okay? This is one of the most difficult things that you can do in programming. But again, most of the setup process or most of the coding process to implement authentication is kind of abstracted away by Clerk. So at the end of the day, really, it is just copy pasting code. Unless you want some, I don't know, weird custom sign-up flow, then you still have to write some code, obviously. But if you go with the standard solution that they provide, you just can use their code snippets. Now, as you can see, we need to do a few things. So first of all, we need to install the Clerk Next.js package. So all you have to do is copy the command, head over to Windsurf, make sure that you're in the correct directory, right? And I'm not. This is why I need to change the directory to TubeGenius. And now I'm in the correct directory, as you can see here. If I type ls, which is the command for listing files and directories inside of a directory, or listing files and folders inside of a directory, you can see that we have indeed the app, the components folder, hooks, and so on, basically the same things that you can see here on the left. Now, all you need to do is to paste this command and hit enter, and then it will install the dependency for you. Now, as you can see, there is an issue because that's something that I've just seen now. I thought we were using Next 15, but apparently Bolt is using Next 13. So you can check this inside of here. And we indeed use Next.js 13, which is not great. So I will probably fix this, change it to Next.js 15, and then there shouldn't be any problems with installing this dependency. If you still want to go with an earlier version of Next, you can add a flag, either the force or -- legacy peer depth flag, and this will resolve the issue and install the package for you. But as I've said, I will quickly change to Next.js 15, and then I can just execute the command as usual. So as you can see, I updated to Next.js 15, and the command that I used was npm I next at latest. I also had to update React and React DOM to make sure that all of the other dependencies are updated as well. Unfortunately, I still can't run the command because apparently there's still some dependency issues. So all that we need to do, if we hit enter, as you can see here, it says fix the upstream dependency conflict or retry this command with force or legacy peer depths. To be honest, I have absolutely no idea what the difference is between those two flags. I always go with legacy peer depths. If you think this is dumb and I should use the other flag, tell me in the comments down below. If you have a completely different solution, tell me that too. I'm always happy to learn something new. So this is why you just want to edit like so. Then this should work without any problems. And as you can see now, we have Clerk inside of our list of dependencies. Now, if we head back over to Clerk, we can basically check the first step. Now we need to copy the environment variables. And for that, we need to create a new file, because as you can see right now, inside of the root of our project, we don't have a .env file. And this is usually where you store your environment variables and API keys so that they are safe, because you don't upload them to GitHub, right? Because if you use version control systems like GitHub, usually you have a .gitignore file where files like .env aren't uploaded and your API keys aren't exposed to the public, right? There are still some additional safety measures that you can use, but for this demo, we'll just go with the .env file. So we'll create a new file, call it .env, and we'll paste that here. By the way, never give the secret key to anyone. Okay, I will revoke this after I uploaded the video, or before I uploaded the video. So now we're done with step 2, and now we need to create a new file, call it middleware.ts. Now, since we're not using the source folder inside of our repository or directory, as you can see. So there's another folder structure basically where you have the app folder not in the root of your directory but inside of the source folder. This is why we can create the middleware.ts file inside of the root. Otherwise we would have to create it inside of the source folder. So create the middleware.ts file. Unfortunately, we don't need this code snippet. We need a more enhanced version, so to speak, because we don't want unauthenticated users to access the dashboard, right? Whenever a user tries to access the dashboard route or any other route for that matter who is not logged in, we want to redirect him to the sign up or sign in page. And this is why you want to go to this URL inside of the Clerk documentation. The URL is clerk.com docs references next.js clerk middleware. And here you basically can find different boilerplate for the middleware.ts file. The boilerplate that we need is this one: protect all routes. To protect all routes in your application and define specific routes as public, you can use any of the above methods and simply invert the if condition. So we'll copy that, head back over to Windsurf and paste it inside of our middleware.ts file. And we only want to give the user access to the sign in, the sign up page, and the landing page, right? So the root of our application, which is essentially just the landing page, right? Then you want to hit save. You want to go back to Clerk, and now we need to wrap our application into the Clerk provider. So for that, you can copy that layout. And first of all, let's have a look at the layout.tsx file. So as you can see, it kind of looks similar, right, to this version, except for the Clerk provider and also the sign out and sign in button, which essentially gives the user the ability to click a profile picture in the top right where it says settings and logout. So this is functionality provided by Clerk, right? So what we need to do is essentially we need to import Clerk provider from Clerk next.js. So let's quickly do this. Import Clerk provider. And then we need to wrap the whole application into the Clerk provider like so, and close it at the bottom. And once you're finished with this and switch back to your application and reload it, nothing will happen because you have to restart the server. But you will probably receive an error where it says middleware cannot be used with output export, see more info here. Now this is where you want to go into the next.config file and you want to delete this statement here. And then again, let's restart the server. And you will see, well, nothing happens because the unauthenticated users have access to the landing page, right? But if we try to access the dashboard, we should be redirected to the login page, as you can see here. Now you've successfully connected Clerk to your application. And if we click on sign in with Google and I choose my account, click continue. Yes, verify I'm human. We are redirected to the dashboard. And if you check your Clerk dashboard, you can see that we now have one user inside of our Clerk user database. So if we have a look at the to-dos inside of our documentation, we still need to connect the existing usernav component with Clerk, right? Because well, I don't want the user to manually try to access a different route and then he prompted to log in. What I want him to be able is to click the login button at the top. As you can see here right now, it says 404, or click the get started free button, and then he will be redirected to the login page, right? So let's ask Windsurf to do this. And another thing that I want Windsurf to do is if we head back over to the dashboard, and right now at the top you can see this little account profile icon. If you click it, we have this drop down, right? But this is hard coded from Bolt. And we also want to change this so that we can access the Clerk user, right? Because if we use Clerk's hooks, or in other words, if we use Clerk's functions, we will be able to see the user at the top right with his profile image, and we also will be able to click it and click the settings, log out. So let's head back over to Windsurf and tell Windsurf to do this. Again, those are two different things, right? So the first thing is that we want to change the functionality of the landing page. And the other thing is that we want to change the functionality of the dashboard route, so to speak. So I will probably go ahead and ask Windsurf to do this with 2 different queries just to make sure that everything works as expected, right? So the first thing that we want to do is first make sure that you've enabled the write feature. And then you can say, please look at to-dos. If you have a look at to-dos, you will see that we are almost finished with the first part, which is authentication. We need to create the Zustand store, and we need to connect the login button of the landing page. And I've changed the project structure a bit because right now dashboard, because if you remember before that we had the landing page, we were able to access the landing page. So this page by going to /landing, but I think that doesn't make sense at all, right? Because if you access a web application, usually you access it by going to, I don't know, Notion.com or YouTube.com or whatever, then you have to sign in, and then you are redirected either to a different route or to a different subdomain. So for example, app.notion.com or whatever, right? So I kind of want the user to experience the same with this application. And then we want to tell, so please change or please add the feature that whenever the user clicks and we have the get started free button or the login button, get started free or the login button in page, he is redirected to the Clerk login screen. And for that, we probably need to do a few things, right? So let's see how that goes. We'll hit enter. Again, I probably have to make this a bit bigger for you guys so that you can see. So now, as you can see, Windsurf says, let me implement the authentication form. Now, it went ahead and did a little bit too much. So this was my mistake because I talked about the store to handle the authentication. Apparently, this was a mistake. The only thing I should have told it to do is to redirect the user to the login page, right? So let's see how this works. So first of all, we get an error because we need to install Zustand, the library. So copy that, create a new terminal, make sure that you're in the correct directory. And then you want to do npm I Zustand. Again, we get the issue with the dependencies. So we'll add the legacy peer deps flag. So this worked. And now, as you can see, the issue was resolved. And if we click this, we get an error because apparently Windsurf redirected us to the sign-in page, which is not correct apparently. And this is the reason why I did this was to show you that those tools aren't perfect, right? So you still need to use a little bit of common sense to understand what you need to do in order to make this work. So for that, we'll head over to the Clerk documentation once more. So we'll head over to Cascade and we'll tell it the following. Say, we need to connect the login button and the get started free button on page to Clerk authentication. What I want you to do is to write the code so that the user is redirected to Clerk's sign in and sign up page to log in to the application. And then we'll hit enter and we'll see what Cascade comes up with. So first of all, it goes ahead and analyzes the page.tsx file. And now what it should do is create 2 new pages, the sign up page and the sign in page. So as you can see here, I've made the following changes to integrate Clerk authentication, added the necessary Clerk imports at the top. And let me show that. As you can see here, sign in, sign up, updated the login button to redirect to sign in, Clerk's default sign in page, updated the get started free button to redirect to sign up, Clerk's default sign up page, updated the other authentication related links in the pricing cards to point to sign in. These changes will now redirect users to the authentication pages, and we can try this. So let's quickly head over to the application and we'll click on Get Started for Free. Now, as you can see, this will redirect us to a 404 page, right? Because although Windsurf has made the changes so that we are redirected to the sign-in page or the sign-up page respectively, it hasn't created the files. As you can see here, usually you would see a new folder inside of the app folder which says sign up, sign in, and then you would be able to make use of this feature, right? So if we head back over to the Clerk documentation, SDK references, Next.js, and then add custom sign up and sign in pages, it says build your own sign in and sign up pages for your Next.js app with Clerk. The guide shows you how to use sign in and sign up components with the Next.js optional catch-all route. And this is basically what Windsurf tried to do, because if we click accept all, you can see that it added the imports, but it didn't use them, right? It says at the top, all imports in import declaration are unused. Apparently, it didn't do shit. This is why we want to do this manual, and this is also the reason why I told you that you want to do some things manually to understand how it works under the hood. So the first step is to build a sign up page. The following example demonstrates how to render the sign up component. So we need to create a new file, call it in the sign up folder under app, and it has to look like this. So we'll head back over here and then we create a new folder, call it sign up. Then we create another folder, so sign with 3 dots, sign up. And inside of this folder, we want to have the page.tsx file. And we want to copy that code snippet and paste that here. So this is all you need to do. Now we have to do the same for the sign in page. So let's quickly do this. We'll create a new folder, call it sign in. And we copy that code snippet and paste that here. Now make the sign up and sign in routes public. So we have already done this, right? Because we've used the middleware.ts file, as you can see here, is public route, sign in, sign up. We also need to update the environment variables. So we'll copy that, head back over here, go into the environment variables and paste that like so. And now you might think this should work, and indeed you would be right, because if we head back over to our application and then we click Get Started Free, you can see that we are immediately redirected to the home route, so to speak. And the reason for that is that we are already logged in, right? I mean, we can't see it yet, but if you have a look at the terminal here, let me make this a bit bigger for you guys again. You can see that we catch the sign up route and Clerk is performing a check if the user is authenticated or not. So this works as it should, but we still have to make one other change so that we can see it in full effect. So let me quickly go to the main nav. To the user nav. As you can see right here, this whole chunk of code is currently hard coded, right? So if you click the user profile, you can see that we get this drop down, and this is essentially what you see here. So you want to delete all of this, and now we need to import a few things from Clerk. So first you want to import signed in, and you want to import user button from Clerk Next.js, and as you can see, Windsurf is already auto-completing what I want to do. So all I have to do is hit the tab button, and then I can click save. And if I switch over to my application, you can see that now my profile image appears in the top right. And if I click it, I can sign out. I can click manage account. So let me quickly sign out. I will be redirected to the login page. And now if I click either login or get started for free, I will be redirected to the correct sign up page. Now, apparently this doesn't look too good, right? Because we haven't applied any styling to it yet. But again, I will probably do this off camera to not bore you with the details, guys. But other than that, it works pretty well. So if we click on the Google sign in button again, and we log in with the account, we still get redirected to the main page again. And this is because we still have to tell Clerk where it should redirect us, right? And we do this inside of the sign in and sign up component. And there is a prop that we can give to this component. And I think in the new Clerk update, it's called force redirect URL. And you want to redirect to the dashboard, right? So again, let me quickly go to the dashboard and click sign out. And then we use the sign in feature again. As you can see, we now get redirected to the dashboard, and we have to do the same for the other component as well. Great. Now, if we have a look at the to-dos, you can see that we have successfully connected the usernav component with Clerk. We created the sign up and login pages. We set up the authentication middleware. We implemented the protected routes. We haven't added user session management yet because this is handled through Clerk and I don't want to create an additional feature that handles this. So now what we need to do is we need to create the Zustand store for handling user authentication. And this is a step, if you've never heard of state management with React, you want to let Cascade do this. So let's open another Cascade window and then we tell it to create the store for us. And it's essential that you create the Zustand store to handle the auth state, because what we are going to do next with Cascade is to create the database connection, right? And we want to have a way so that whenever a user signs up or signs in, we want him to be stored in the Supabase in a users table, right? So this is why we need this synchronization, so to speak, between Clerk and Supabase. And again, it's fairly simple to implement this if you have proper documentation and you can tell Windsurf what to do. In Cursor, it's essentially the same, although in my experience, Cursor works a bit better. I don't know why. I mean, you can always add the documentation to Cursor, right? This is an option that you don't have in Cascade, but even if it doesn't work on the first prompt, you can always go to the documentation, paste the code snippet inside of Cascade, and then let Cascade handle everything else. So let's quickly open a new Cascade window, and then I've prepared the following prompt. If you have a look at the first section of to-dos, you can see that we already successfully implement most of what is necessary for Clerk authentication. And I've checked all of the steps that we already finished successfully. Now the last step that we need to take is to create a Zustand store for handling user state according to state management. And I want Windsurf to find the first part of the documentation, right? So the user state, as you can see here, so that I can sync Clerk authentication with adding the user to my database, to my user table in my database. Please go ahead and create not only the store, but the corresponding hook for that action, so I can finally proceed with the next step of my to-do list, which is the database integration. And we'll hit enter and we'll see what Windsurf comes up with. So it will probably go ahead, create a new folder inside of our project directory, call it store. And inside of this store folder, we will have a new file called user store. And as you can see, we're using Zustand as we specified earlier. And now we also have the corresponding hook. So this is the useAuth sync hook that we need to basically add each authenticated user to our Supabase table. If you have a look at the file, you can see that we basically check if the user exists. And then we create a user data object where we store the ID, which is the Clerk user ID, the email, the first name, the last name, and the image URL. And inside of the store, we then still have to implement the actual database logic. But well, Windsurf can only do this if it has all of the necessary files. For example, the actual name of the Supabase table where we store the user, because think about it, we haven't created the Supabase project yet, but we've prepared everything so that we can basically connect everything as soon as we created the Supabase integration. Okay, so what we want to do now is first read through the explanation. So I've created two new files to handle user state management and Clerk authentication. First, the store and the useAuth sync hook, and we even get an explanation where it says implements its Zustand store with persistence, manages user state including basic profile info and subscription status, includes functions for setting, updating and clearing user data, has a sync with database function that will be implemented when database integration is ready, as you can see, and as I've already told you a couple of seconds ago. And we have a hook that synchronizes Clerk authentication state with your Zustand store, automatically updates the store when Clerk user state changes, prepares user data for database synchronization, and handles the cleanup by clearing user data on sign out. Now that we are finished with this part, we click accept all. Now please keep in mind, this, what you see here, is not the final solution. Right now we're just using Zustand, which is more for the client side state management, and what we also want to implement is React Query. Before we dive into the Supabase project, I will probably quickly go ahead and explain the concepts of client side and server side state management. Because when I first started out and was confronted with those two concepts inside of Windsurf and Cursor, I didn't know anything about it. So let's quickly head over to Fine and I will explain it quickly so that you just have a conceptual overview of how it actually works. Okay, so let's have a look at state management, what it is, and why I think you should still learn about it, even if you're using AI coding tools like Cursor or Windsurf to create your applications. And by the way, I'm really dropping my pants here, okay? I'm still learning all of these concepts myself. So if you find any inconsistencies in the information that I give you or anything that is just plain wrong, please drop a comment down below. I'm always happy to learn new things and to improve my knowledge. So that being said, state management describes the concept of changing, well, variable state in your application. What does this mean? So imagine as our app is growing, we will have different components. So for example, we will have a header, we have a card component, and a bunch of other components. Now, maybe we want to give the user the ability to change the theme, right? So maybe you want to have a dark theme and a light theme. Now imagine having an application with 400 components. You want a central store that each and every component has access to, so that you don't need to manually pass the variables to each and every component, because think about it, this would be a horror to maintain, right? So this is kind of the idea behind state management. Now, what does this mean for our application? Imagine this is our application and we have a user that tries to access the application by logging in, right? So in our example, and by the way, let me maybe zoom in a bit. And in our example, we use Clerk, which handles authentication state, right? So whenever a user logs in, Clerk issues a token. And inside of this token, it stores specific information. So for example, the unique identifier, maybe the email, maybe the name, and a bunch of other stuff Clerk needs to properly authenticate the user. So far, so good. What then happens is that this token is stored inside of a cookie in the browser. Now, this has a few limitations. So first of all, if the user would try to access the application over his phone, there's no way for the phone to access this cookie because it's stored in the browser session, right? And another thing is that Clerk can only store authentication related information. So what if we want to store other information, like for example, the theme settings? We need a different solution for that, right? And this is where we utilize two different libraries in this application. So first of all, Zustand, and the other is React Query. Now, what's the difference? Zustand handles client-side state and React Query handles server-side state. So what does this mean? If we have a look at our application, right? So let me quickly put this here. So in our example, we have the application and we have the cards here. We have the input field, we have the button, we have the header. So this is the client with the different elements in the front end that the user can interact with, okay? But we also have the server. So imagine you're using Bolt to create your application. And if you click the deploy button at the top right, it will utilize a service called Netlify to host your application on the internet, right? And this server has also access to our database. And we do this because we don't want the client to have access to the database. We want to have kind of like a gateway, so to speak, to communicate with user data, for example. Because if we would handle everything through the client, a hacker could easily exploit this. But we could also have a different client. So for example, we have the phone, because our application is also available on the phone. And those two things are constantly communicating with the server, right? So we could write our application in the way that whenever we use Zustand to change the state of a specific variable, for example, the theme, the change of state is also displayed in the other client. So in this example, in the phone. How could we achieve this? For that, we use React Query. And React Query kind of acts like a bridge. So bear with me, this is a bridge. I know my drawing skills are not the best, which helps us to communicate with the server. Maybe we have a table inside of our database called users preferences. And inside of this user preferences, we have a specific column which stores the theme settings. So what React Query will help us to do is it provides a lightweight way to communicate with the server so that the server can then make some changes in the database, store the dark mode setting, for example. And when we access the application through our phone, React Query fetches the user settings for the theme from the database and uses Zustand to store the state, if that makes sense. And this ensures that the theme settings are consistent across different devices. Now, bear with me, I know this was a pretty non-technical explanation and maybe it's even wrong in some specific parts. So again, if you have anything to add, please drop a comment down below. Now let's head back over to Windsurf to start the database implementation. So before we can tell Windsurf to use our documentation, like the database schema and the state management document to write the code for us, we still have to set up the Supabase project, right? And for those of you who already know how this works, you can just skip this section and watch the rest of the video. But I just wanted to put everything in the video so that you can follow this as a tutorial from start to finish. So let's head over to Supabase. If you haven't yet created an account, you just have to click Start Your Project, and then you will be redirected to the sign up page, and you can log into Supabase. So once you've signed up, you will be prompted to create an organization and also a project, and you have to generate a database password, and you want to store this database password somewhere safe, right? Because we need it later down the line. And then you will see something like this. So this is your organization name, and you will also see the application or the project that you have created. Now, if you click on this project, you will kind of see the dashboard page where you can see the project status. Right now, the setup process is still running. And now we can basically access the table editor where we will store the different tables that we need for our project. But what we need is we have to click on project settings and on the connect button at the top. So we will need the URI, the direct connection, and we also need the password, as you can see here, because we will use Prisma to communicate with the database. So otherwise we would use SQL to communicate with the database, but Prisma is a way which kind of abstracts away this necessity, and we can communicate with the database through our terminal inside of Windsurf. Okay, so again, you want to sign up and log in to the application. So let me quickly log into Prisma. And then you will see something like this. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to click create a new project, and you want to give it a name. So in my case, I call it Tube Genius. And then you want to click on get started for accelerate. And what you want to do is you want to paste the database connection string in here. And you get this from Supabase, as I've said. You want to click on the connect button at the top, and then you want to copy that. Want to head over to Prisma. I want to paste this here, and you also want to paste your password or this string, right? So let me quickly do this, and after that you can just click create project, and that's everything you need to do. So you can see the database connection string and so on, and if you click on the dashboard you will see your Tube Genius project like so. Now, we need to do a few things inside of Windsurf to properly set up the connection. So let's head over there. And what we need is the .env file, because here we have to paste the database connection string for our application, right? So let's head back over to Supabase, and you want to grab this, and you want to call it database URL, and then you want to save this here, and you also want to paste the correct password, right? So let me quickly grab my password and replace the string. And again, I will blur this out so you can't see it, guys. Make sure that you never give your passwords or API keys to anyone, right? Because people can exploit this and it will cost you a lot of money. And then we want to save the file, and that's about it. So, but before we connect everything, we need to use a different prompt. And please keep in mind, this is the first time that I use this workflow, right? Which is based on the different documents that I've generated with the prompt from my last video, right? So I don't always know if Windsurf will act as expected. This is why in this specific example I used the chat mode, because I didn't want it to do weird stuff. So now I told it, now that we set up the database with Supabase and Clerk, please have a look at todos.md and compare this with the TubeGenius project to see what task we've already finished successfully. Please create a new file, progress.md, and put it in the documentation folder with the list of the successfully finished tasks. Output in GitHub flavored markdown. Now, as you can see, it went ahead, analyzed the to-dos and also the rest of the project, and then it gave me this file, and I've manually created the progress.md file. So let's have a look at its contents. For the first phase, which is authentication and user management, we completed nearly all the tasks except for creating the auth state in the Zustand store, because keep in mind, we still have to install and connect React query for this. As for the database integration, we're basically finished with that. So we set up the Supabase project and the database connection. We've created the comprehensive database schema with Prisma, the users table, saved ideas table, and so on. We even went ahead and generated the TypeScript types, and you can verify this by going to the use user store. And as you can see here, we have the interfaces for the user and also for the user state. Now we still need to add one more property here, because we need to give access to the Clerk ID, right? And this is also a string. So let me quickly add this manually and save the file. And we also need to update the store accordingly, but we will ask Windsurf to do this. Okay, so let's quickly head back over to progress.md, and you can see that we have started some of the tasks of part 3, which is the component integration and state management. So we have the initial project structure set up and the basic component architecture, and now we need to set up the Zustand store, connecting the components and so on. And it even went ahead and gave us the next steps priority, which is complete Zustand store setup for auth state, implement React query for data fetching, and connect the existing components to the backend and so on. So this is why we will now use the next prompt, which I have also prepared. So let's open a new Cascade window, and then we'll use this prompt. Now that we've set up the database integration with Supabase and Prisma, and we also started the sync process between Clerk and Supabase with use user store and use auth sync, I want you to finish the setup for the auth state in Zustand store, and I want you to connect everything to React query so that I can test if the new user is stored in the users table inside of Supabase whenever he authenticates. Please walk me through the whole process, plus setting up React query to work with your application. So make sure that you have enabled the right function or feature. And by the way, whenever you are finished with a specific feature, so in this case, we've implemented Clerk authentication and we are done with the database integration, you want to do a and git commit from time to time to save your work, right? So because sometimes Windsurf, Cursor, other AI coding tools can mess up your code, and you want to have a snapshot of your application that you can use to always revert back the status, if that makes sense. So in this case, we want to make a git commit, and we want to call it edit features authentication with Clerk, database integration with Supabase plus Prisma, setting up the basic tables. And we want to close the quote. Now that we're done with this, we want to hit enter for this task and let Windsurf walk us through the setup process. So I'll help you set up the React query and connect it with your authentication system. Let's first examine the current state of your files and then implement the necessary changes. And it will look at the use user store, use auth sync, because I've added it to the context, right? And then it went ahead and created a new providers folder with the query provider, and it also created a new API route. Now, this will probably piss off some real devs in the comments, right? Because I have actually no idea if this project structure makes sense, right? Usually what I do is I use the source folder and I structure my projects a bit different because I would have everything inside of the source folder. But since I've used Bolt to set up the project and basically just copy pasted everything, this is kind of what I have to work with, right? So please bear with me. Okay, so now that we have set up all the necessary components, here's a summary of what we've implemented. And we have to look at layout because Windsurf should have wrapped our application in the query provider, which it did, and a dedicated API layer that handles all user-related database operation, enhanced auth sync. The use auth sync hook now uses React query for data fetching and caching, properly syncs between Clerk and Supabase. We have an optimized user store. So let's quickly look at this. As you can see, we've deleted a bunch of stuff, which is for the database operations, right? And we now handle this in a different file, which is in the use auth sync hook, as you can see here. So let's quickly scroll through the answer. First, wrap your app with the query provider. Windsurf already did this for us. Then it created a test component to display the user state. You can now add this component to any page where you want to test the authentication flow. For example, you could add it to your dashboard or profile page to test the complete flow, sign in with Clerk, and everything should run fully automatically, meaning the user should be added to the database. So we'll have a look if this works. So let me quickly open this. So we get some errors because we haven't installed the React query dev tools. So let's quickly do this. It's not really necessary to have them. Maybe we don't install them because it's not really necessary. It's for like debugging code, but this is kind of out of the scope of this video. So let me quickly do it like so, and this should resolve the issue. Now, if we switch back to Supabase and refresh, we probably don't see anything, right? No. So let me do the following. Let's sign out and then we'll click login again and we sign into the application. And usually we should be able to see the user here, but it didn't work. So the reason for that is that there's probably something off in the use auth sync hook, and as you can see, we kind of have a type error here, but this shouldn't be the problem. So maybe we can do the following. Let's import the user debug component, add this right at the top of our main. So we want to use the user debug component. Let's see if we can see anything. So API users import Supabase. Let me quickly have a look at this. So apparently we don't have the Supabase client set up. And so what we can do is you can always hover over the error and then you want to click on Windsurf explain and fix the problem. This will open a new query, so to speak, and Windsurf will go ahead and fix the issue. In this case, we need to create a new file, call it Supabase TS, which essentially is the Supabase client, right? But we also need to install this package here. So first of all, let's click accept all, and then you want to copy that and you want to do npm I paste the package and install it again with the legacy peer deps flag, and this should resolve the issue in this file, hopefully. And now we need to add a new environment variable. So if you can remember, we added the database URL, but this is only for Prisma, right? We need to do the same for Supabase. So if you have a look at the supabase.ts file, you can see that we need two environment variables. We need next public Supabase URL and we need next public Supabase anon key. So let's quickly copy that and we need to call it Supabase URL. So now you get this inside of your Supabase dashboard, right? So let's quickly head over to Supabase and to the project settings, and here you want to go to API. So this is what you need, the URL, and you also need the public key, as you can see here. So let's quickly add this to the file. We'll save it And now we need to restart the server. So let's quickly do this. So as you can see, it's loading. This took a while to propagate, unfortunately. Now, as you can see, we have the Clerk user with the ID and all of the different elements stored inside of the Clerk user object. And now if we switch back over to Supabase, we still don't see the user. And the reason for that is if we switch back over to the application and we look into the console, okay? And we see this error which says failed to sync user object, and it says there's a PGRST204 error inside of Supabase, which means could not find the avatar URL column of users in the schema cache, which means if we have a look at our Supabase table, you can see that we indeed don't have the avatar URL column, right? We only have the Clerk user ID, the email, the subscription status, created at and updated at. So what you want to do is you can just go here, you can copy this, and you can head back over to Windsurf, and you can tell it, okay, I can see the user debug element with all of its properties. However, I get a console error. And you want to paste this. Please check schema.prisma to make sure that we have the necessary fields in our Supabase table for the process of syncing user auth with adding him to the database. What you can also do is head back over to your application and you can paste the Clerk, you can copy paste the Clerk user here for reference, okay? So Clerk user from front end, and we can say the store user and query user is empty or null. The store user and query user is empty or null. Please use chain of thought reasoning to find the exact reason for this error and resolve it. Walk me through it step by step. And then you want to hit enter and, well, just wait what Windsurf comes up with. So let me help you debug this issue step by step using chain of thought reasoning. First, let's understand the error. This error suggests that there's a mismatch between the database schema and the data we're trying to store. Let's check, and this is why it's crucial to have a clean and proper documentation. Again, right now, just by trying to teach this stuff to you guys, I found a bunch of problems with the files, especially when it comes to the front end and even the database schema design. So I will definitely update my workflow accordingly and share this in the free Discord community with you guys so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that I did, okay? So now let's check the user API implementation. I can now identify several issues. We have a schema mismatch. The schema uses Clerk user ID, but our API uses Clerk underscore ID, missing fields in schema, first name, last name, image URL. The error specifically mentions avatar URL is missing. Let's fix the Prisma schema to match our requirements. I'll update it to include all the necessary fields. And now if we have a look at the file, so where is it? The schema Prisma, you can now see that we have added 4 additional fields. Now that we've updated the schema, we need to generate a new migration and we want to accept the command. Let's see if this works. So let's do accept all. So let's switch back to the terminal and do npm prisma db push. Okay, so it says your database is now in sync with your prisma.schema. Let's quickly verify this. And now you can see that we have avatar URL, first name, last name, and so on. And now we can tell Windsurf I manually pushed the new schema to the database. Please proceed with your bug fix process. Again, walk me through it step by step. Great, now let's continue with the debugging process. First, let's check the useAuth sync hook to see how we're handling the user sync. And again, it goes through all of the files and basically compares them with the rest of the code to see if everything works together correctly. And if not, it updates the different code snippets. So we'll give it a few more seconds and then we'll verify if this already fixed the issue or if we still have to do some minor adjustments. So let's check the application. We'll quickly reload. We got 2 errors. So we can neglect the hydration error and it still says failed to sync user. again, you want to copy that, head over to Windsurf, hit accept all, and let me see if we get a different error inside of here. So we reload the application. So we get a different error. It says bad request, invalid input syntax for type UUID. So the reason for that is that we are trying to store the Clerk user ID, which is this one here, in Supabase under the ID. At least that's what I think is happening. So again, you want to copy all of that and you want to head over to Windsurf and say, now we're getting a different error. Please use the same steps to resolve this one. But it's great that we're getting the Clerk user ID. So we're almost there, guys. And again, I'm trying to explain this in a way for those of you who really are the beginning of their AI coding journey, like I am. I mean, maybe I'm 1 or 2 steps ahead of you guys, but still every day I'm learning something new and I'm trying to improve the workflow. But this just takes time, right? So I'm really sharing every single step of the way to, again, as I've said, help you so that you don't have to make the same mistakes as I did. So first, let's check how we're handling IDs in our user sync. Let's modify our schema to handle the IDs correctly. Now let's update our user sync logic. Finally, let's update the query in the use auth sync hook. So we again made some changes in the schema and we need to run a new migration or push the schema to the database once again. So let's quickly do this. Let's do npx prisma db push. So as you can see, we get an error. It says cannot drop constrain user speak key on table because other objects dependent on it. Okay, so what I did now after receiving this error was to simply paste it into Windsurf once more. It says, I see the issue. We have a foreign key constraint from other tables referencing the user's table's UUID primary key. Instead of changing the ID type, let's modify our approach to work with UUIDs. And now we've installed a package called UUID. And here's what we've changed. So we made some schema changes, API layer changes. And now you can see we still get some errors and I will investigate this off camera. But other than that, we have the user object at the top, as you can see here. And if we switch back over to Supabase, you can see that we have the user ID, where we use the UUID package, so to speak. And we also get the correct data from the Clerk user object, which is the user ID, the email subscription status is inactive currently. And we have the created updated timestamp, the avatar URL, and the first and the last name. So we've successfully synced the authentication process with the database. And now we can head back over to Windsurf and basically add this to our progress.md file. Okay, so apparently there was another issue and I once again pasted it into Windsurf and said, okay, it worked. The user was successfully added to the database and I can see it in the Zustand user store in the debug element. However, the query user is still empty. Is this correct? And also, I get the following console error. So I pasted the error and it said, I see the issue. The error, Clerk user ID, suggests that we're passing an object instead of a string to the query. Let's fix this by checking the use auth sync hook and the get user. So it went ahead and basically fixed the issue. And now if we switch back over to our application, you can see that the error is gone because before that I had 3 errors. And now we have the Clerk user, we also have the store user, and we have the query user, and this is essentially the same, right? Great. Now we've finished syncing the user authentication with adding the user to Supabase by using Zustand and React Query. And what we need to do now is we can go ahead and do a git add and a git commit and call it edit feature user authentication synced to adding user to DB with React Query and Zustand. So the next step is that we can add the successfully finished steps to the progress.md file. And then we head over to the next section, which is according to Windsurf. Let me quickly scroll down a bit. Enhancing the search bar functionality, which is, well, adding the YouTube API integration, right? But before that, as I've said, we want to use the same prompt as before. And I've prepared this here. So, okay, great. We've successfully synced user authentication with adding the user to the database using query and Zustand. Now here's what I want you to do. Please compare to-dos with ProgressMD and add the new finished to-dos to ProgressMD. For that, you probably need to scan TubeGenius again to fully understand what we just did. For better documentation, mark the finished to-dos in todos.md with an X. So I did this manually, but now I want Windsurf to do it. Once you're done, please explain step by step what features we added and then wait for my confirmation. And this is crucial, right? I could have also said, okay, please lay out the next steps, but I want to have clear separation of concern. I guess you could say that I only want Cascade to do one specific thing at a time. And right now I wanted to add the finished to-dos to progress.md. So we'll hit enter and then we'll wait until it's finished. As you can see, it, added the new step, create auth state and Zustand store. We also finished all of the database integration. We also finished some of the component integration and state management. So we configured the Zustand store and we configured a store for user state and authentication. And we implemented React query, set up the query client, create the query hooks for API calls, and implemented a caching strategy, at least for the user synchronization process, I guess you could say. So let's have a look at, I don't know why it does this, but it looks weird. But okay, so here's a summary of the features we've added. Implemented Zustand store for user state, created user synchronization between Clerk and database, set up proper TypeScript types for user data, database integration, successfully integrated Supabase with the application, created a tested user table with proper UUID handling, set up foreign key relationships for future features, data fetching layer, implemented React query for efficient data fetching, state synchronization, and type safety. Okay, now we'll hit accept all and let's have a look at the progress file. So as you can see, we added new stuff to the progress file, component integration. We have added implement React query for data fetching, created user synchronization system, set up efficient caching strategy. And right now we need to set up additional Zustand stores for search result, chat history, and saved ideas. So this is why I will ask Cascade to lay out the next steps based on the different documentation files that we have, right? Because before we can actually give functionality to our application, we want to make sure that we have all of the infrastructure in place so that we can properly update the state both in the database and also in the front end, if that makes sense. So I asked Windsurf once again to compare the to-dos with the plan it suggested. And as you can see, it kind of changed the next steps a bit. So for example, we deleted the... So for example, it changed the setup core or added the setup core navigation and layout part. So we really don't need this because we are already done with this. But for some reason, this has fallen out of the context for Cascade, but this is not really a big deal. So basically, we're done with the component integration and state management for the user state and authentication. And it recognized that the chat history and the saved ideas comes in phase 5, as you can see here, when we have the AI integration and the chat integration. We will now proceed with the next phase, which is the search and video features. And for that, we will implement the YouTube API integration and everything. So we'll once again switch back over to Cascade, and then we'll tell it to start the work. And for that, we'll use the following prompt. So let me quickly paste this here, and let me also link the correct files. So todos.md and also progress.md. Let's see. So I like to use this kind of prompt from time to time just to understand if I'm on the same page with Windsurf, right? So before we proceed, I want you to lay out the exact steps that we need to take in order to implement our first core feature. And if we have a look at prd.md, sometimes I just like to paste the specific lines from the documents, right? So that I don't have to bloat the context window as much, if that makes sense. where was I? Ah, yes. Okay, so the exact steps that we need to take in order to implement the first core feature, which is the keyword search. And users can search for a keyword and view related YouTube videos, including regular videos and shorts. We only want to display regular videos. So let me quickly delete this. For that, you can use state management.md, because remember, if we have a look at progress, one of the next steps are creating the additional Zustand stores and connect everything to the backend. So I want Windsurf to analyze state management to see that we already have some stores in there that it can use, and to compare everything with to-dos and progress to fully understand what it needs to do next. And as you can see in state management, we already have some stores and queries defined for our application. Please also check whether they work with our current data management in the application, or if we have to add or delete some properties, no need to write code yet, just plan. Also make sure that you have enabled the chat feature, right? So then you want to hit enter and basically watch Windsurf plan the whole thing for you. So let's wait until it's finished. So let me analyze the current state management setup and plan the implementation. We already have the video model in our schema. We need to add a search history table integration. And as for the state management requirements, the current video store, which is inside of the state management file, needs some update. We need to add the search query, the search history, and is searching an error. And for the React query integration, we need the use search videos hook, the use search history hook, and the use save search history hook. And the implementation steps are as follows. So first, we need to create the YouTube API client. We need to implement video search endpoint and add search history endpoints, set up proper error handling. And as for the state management layer, well, you can just pause the video and read through it. And for the technical requirements, we also have to do a few things. So we need to connect the YouTube data API, think about rate limiting implementation, and so on, yada, yada, yada. And the sequence of implementation is the backend first. So set up YouTube API integration, create search history endpoints, and so on. Then the state management, then the UI layer, and then eventually testing our optimization. But as I've said, this is out of the scope of this video. So our current setup is mostly compatible, but we need to add search specific fields to video store, create new React query hooks for search, implement search history tracking, and add proper error handling. Okay, so now before I just tell Windsurf to do this, I wanted to use these steps and add them to the to-dos, right? So that sounds great. For proper documentation and as a reference for you, I want you to add these steps to the correct phase in to-dos so that we can keep track of what we have done. So we'll do send. And I mean, if you haven't realized this by now, it's an iterative process, right? The next video that I record, which is for a different application, will probably look different because, as I've said, I have to update the document generation process in the beginning for the, well, for the MD files so that I have everything planned out correctly and I don't need to change as much. I'll let Windsurf write the application, but other than that, I think as a first try, this is pretty neat. So as you can see, it added this to the search and video features for week 2 and 3, implement YouTube API integration, and so on. And now let's have a look at the answer. So I've organized the task into 5 main categories: YouTube API integration, search stage management, and so on. Each category has detailed subtasks that align with our implementation plan. I've also made sure to include specific technical requirements like caching duration, debouncing times, and pagination limits. Would you like me to remove the old, less detailed search tasks that were there before, add any additional specific tasks or requirements? And well, for now, we'll just hit accept all. And now what we need to do is to create the store for the search results, right? And connect everything with the backend. Okay, and for that, we want to use the following prompt. We already have usernav and header component. I want you to implement the search feature, but don't do it all at once. Focus on the YouTube API integration for now, create the folders and files that are necessary, and walk me through the process of setting up a project in cloud.console.google if necessary to get the API key. Now, here's how I want you to connect it to the front end. Don't create the video store yet, but connect the API call to the search bar in page.tsx. When I search for the keyword, I just want to see the response of the API in the browser console. So what will happen, hopefully, is that Cascade will write everything for us. And then we can search for a keyword, for example, AI coding, and I can hit search. And if I open the console, I will see the API response in here. So this is the idea, right? And the reason why I'm doing this is so that I give very specific tasks to Cascade. I could go ahead and tell it to just implement everything right away, but this would involve a bunch of steps, right? So if we have a look at to-dos, you can see that it would have to implement the YouTube API integration, create the error handling, TypeScript interfaces, and also go ahead, create the video store, the queries and everything. This is a lot, right? And I want to have control over the code generation process as well as possible. You know what I mean. I'm the one in control, and I need to double check the work and see if everything works as expected. Because it's much easier to just resolve the issue of a small feature or a few lines of code than to resolve an issue that is in a code snippet which is like 200 lines of code. So we'll hit enter and then we'll see what Cascade comes up with. So it creates a new file, client TS, the YouTube client. I wonder where it does this, inside of a new folder probably. Yeah, okay, so inside of the YouTube folder, here's the client. So we need to go ahead and get the YouTube API key, and Windsurf is so kind and explains us how we can do this. So if you've never done this, you can follow the next step. Otherwise, you can just skip this section and watch the rest of the video. But I want, again, as I've said, I want to make sure that you understand each and every single step that you need to do in order to use Cascade Cursor as your coding companion, so to speak. Okay, so let's see. We created the client. Now let's update the search bar component to use the YouTube API. So let's have a look at the search bar component. As you can see here, it added the function to handle the search. Now we have to double check if this is the correct solution, right? Because we're not using Zustand for that. But then again, I haven't told it to use Zustand. I just told it to make it work so that we can see if it works. And after that, we will integrate it with the rest of our. So now let's hit accept. And what we need to do now is we need to head over to the browser and go to console.cloud.google.com. And you want to create a new account. Yeah, I agree. Blah, let me quickly switch this to, I don't know, whatever. So you want to create a new account, and then you will be probably redirected to a page that looks something like this. You want to click on this drop down here, and you want to create a new project. And in my case, I will call it Tube Genius, but you can call it whatever you want. You don't have to choose a location, just hit create. And this should take a couple of seconds. As you can see here, it says create project Tube Genius. Then we want to select the project, and as you can see, the project changed in the top. And what you want to do now is to click on the three bars, go to API and services, and then you want to click on enable APIs and services. You want to search for YouTube, and we need the YouTube data API V3, right? So click it. You want to enable this, and you probably also have to link a billing account, but don't worry, it doesn't cost you any money, because when you create a new account with Google, I think they give you around $300 worth of credits. So the way you would create a billing account is, again, you click on the navigation menu at the top, and then you will click on billing. And here you can click on the drop-down menu, click on Manage Billing Accounts, and you would click Create an Account, and then you would just follow the setup process. You have to link your credit card, and after that, you can link the billing account to your project. Okay, so let's head back over to API and services. And what we need to do now is we need to create an API key, right? So at the top, click on Create Credentials. And then we're using, again, the YouTube API V3. We will access public data. Click on Next. And here's your API key. Again, never ever share your API key with anyone. I will revoke this key before I upload the video, okay? So you want to copy that, click on Done. Then you want to head over to Windsurf. And as you can see here, we need to create a new environment variable file inside of our .env file. And we need to give it the name next public and not J but key, and paste it here and save it. Restart your Next.js development. Server is the next step. Go to your dashboard page, try searching for a keyword, open your browser's developer tools and check the console for the API response. So let me quickly see if this works. So we'll restart the server. Then we'll head back over to our application. We reload. So let's open the console. And let's see if we can search for something. We'll do AI coding and we'll hit search. And as you can see, we get something. So let me see if this already worked. Here we have some items and there we have the different videos. So here's and basically everything that we need to further enhance the functionality of our application. So we have the description, we have the publish date, we have the thumbnails. And by the way, the reason why we only see this info like channel ID, channel title, and so on is because, well, this is the only thing that we are fetching, right? So if we go to the client.ts, you can see that we are fetching the title, the description, the thumbnails, and we can go ahead and tell Windsurf that we also want the other metrics, right? As you can see here, we want to display the channel size and we want to display the upload date. So we probably have to update our database schema once more. But this is not the big deal, so we can tell Windsurf to help us. Okay, so this worked quite well. I get the response in the browser console. Now, unfortunately, I need you to add a few more properties to the API call. So if you have a look at, and we need to link the video card, you will see that we display the subscriber count of the channel the video belongs to, and also the upload date of the video. Now, we probably have to update the schema in our database to make this work. So please have a look at, and we want to link the, let's see, the schema, the Prisma file. So could you please go ahead, prepare everything for that, and also update so that we can check if we can display the additional properties in the browser console. Okay, again, this is a fairly small task, right? Because all that Windsurf needs to do is to go inside of the schema file, add the additional fields, and then update the client, and we can test this once again. So we'll hit enter, and again you want to do a git add. Okay, I see we need to add subscriber count and upload date. Let's update the YouTube client to fetch channel details and update the database schema to store these additional fields. Update the types to match. Okay, so we'll give it a few more seconds, and then we'll push the new schema to the database, and then we'll test the API call once again. Okay, so let's have a look at the Prisma schema file. You can see that we now added this to the video model, and we also need to update the search history model to reflect the new changes. Okay, so we'll do accept all. Again, we need to do npx prisma db push. Okay, so let's check if this worked. So we'll have a look at the videos table. As you can see, we now added the publish ad and subscriber count of the channel. We can basically test the new feature, the updated API request. Okay, so we'll head over to the front end, and to be honest, I've already tested this off camera and it works. So you can see that I've searched for AI coding, and if we switch back over to the console, you can see that we have the user message where it says YouTube video search results, and we get the videos. And here inside of the videos, so let me pick the first one. We have the channel title, word of AI, check out Brilliant for a free 30-day trial as the description. And we also have the statistics where we display the comment count, the favorite count, the like count, and the view count. So now we basically have everything that we need in order to, well, enhance our front end and especially the video cards, right? So what we can do now is we can head over to Cascade, once more tell it to update the progress file with the new finished to-dos, and then we'll basically take the next steps. So let me quickly switch back over to my to-dos file. So what we've done is we've set up the YouTube API. We implemented rate limiting, not yet, but we really don't have to in this example, so we'll delete that one. We still need to create an error handling strategy. I haven't checked the files yet, so I don't know if Cascade has already done this, but we have added the TypeScript interfaces, and now what we need to do is we need to enhance the search state management, and for that we need to create and update the video store. So again, we will tell Cascade to add the tasks to the progress file, and we'll probably do this off camera because it's just repetitive, right? And then I will get back to you once we start the next task of adding the video store. So I again told Windsurf to update the to-dos file and also the progress file so that we can properly keep track of everything that we've done so far. And now I wanted to again lay out the next steps for creating the Zustand store to handle the client-side state. So for the video, according to to-dos, to handle the client-side state and also connect it to the backend with React Query so that we can store the video search results in the database and cache the results, right? So, because here's the thing, sometimes, and I don't know if this is the proper solution to this problem, okay? So if there are any real devs watching the video, please leave a comment down below so I can actually understand how this works. This is just, I don't know, it's just an intuitive solution that I'm using, okay? So what I want to implement is that sometimes the user is searching for the same keyword multiple times, okay? Because maybe he's searching for AI coding, then he clicks on generate ideas, and then he goes back, searches for another query, and then he's searching for AI coding again. I kind of don't want the application to make an API request every time the user is searching for the same keyword. So this is why we are going to use React Query to cache the results for a specific amount of time. And inside of our to-do file, let me show you, Windsurf has specified the 12 hours we fetch new video results should the user search for the same query again. But during those 12 hours, the user basically always sees the same results, right? So let's hit enter and let's see what Cursor Cascade comes up with. And I should definitely use Cursor again, but right now I'm just too cheap to pay like $20 because Cascade is, well, cheaper. Okay, so I'll lay out the next steps for implementing the video state management with Zustand. First, let's check our current state management setup. Here's the implementation plan. So we need to create an API route for the video search. Then we need to create the video store with Zustand. Then we create the React Query hook. Because remember, right now we're just making the API request basically inside of the client file, right? But we want Zustand and React Query to handle this in an extra file. So let's scroll down. Then we need to create the React Query hook, as I've said, update the search bar component, and this caches the search results in the database for 12 hours. Now, we probably also have to update the video card, right? Because right now it's just the API call. So if we would do it like this and we would hit search for a keyword, we also would display the search result in the console, right? So we will quickly change this to right and say, okay, I like this plan. And again, by the way, we also want to do a git add, git commit. And now you want to say, okay, I like this plan. Please go ahead and implement it. Please also integrate everything with our video card component so that I can see the results in the front end. Did I miss anything? Oh, and if we can delete any files after you implemented Zustand and React Query or the API call, please tell me. Because it might be that we can delete the client.ts file, but I'm not sure about this. So let's hit enter. And really, it's not a big deal if Windsurf would F this up, because we can always revert back to the latest commit, right? So let's have a look at the stores folder. So this is unfortunate. We have to move this store to the store folder because we kind of want everything in one place, right? But other than that, it's not a big deal. So we have the API folder. Let me see. So we'll create the Zustand store. Now let's create the API route, and we'll do this where? In API videos search route. And we also create the React query hook. We'll update the search bar and create a video grid component to display search results using our video card. So that's awesome. Okay, so we still need to do a few things. So first of all, we need to create the Prisma client, and we also need to change the import to server, I believe. And let me quickly check. So if we hit accept all, we probably get a bunch of errors. So no videos found. Okay, so let me see. Okay, yeah. So I will quickly resolve this issue. We need to create the, well, let me see. So the problem is that we don't have Prisma as a file, but we call it DB, right? So you can do one of two things. Either you can go ahead and let me do it like so. You can export Prisma. You can import Prisma, but not from libdb, but from db like so. And we also need to do it like so, so that we don't get any issues. Okay. And now let's see if we search for AI coding. Search failed. Okay. It says use mutation, search error. Okay. So let me see. We'll copy that and we'll head back over to Windsurf because we get another error in the console. So we'll do, okay. I tried the search feature, but I get a bunch of errors. Here's the browser console error, and here's the terminal error. So you want to copy all of that and copy that and paste it here. So let me quickly read through it. The payload argument must be of type object. Okay, so let's see. Please use chain of thought reasoning to find the core issue and fix it, then walk me through it step by step. You want to hit enter. And we probably also have to do something different for the video grid, right? So let me quickly see if we're using the video card. So we'll handle this later, one step at a time. Let's debug this step by step. So front end error search failed. This is our custom error from the mutation. Payload argument must be of type object, received null. The error occurs in the error logging, suggesting the actual error is happening earlier. Okay, so potential issues. Database connection, Clerk authentication. Let's check the database connection first. The issues and fixes were using response.json instead of next response.json. So let's see. We reload the page. You can ignore this error. This is something to do with one of my Chrome extensions, and this has nothing to do with the application. So let's do AI coding again. Failed to execute JSON on response, unexpected end of JSON input. Okay, now this is a different error. I have absolutely no idea what this means. So again, we use the same tactic. We copy the error and we paste it in Windsurf. First hit accept all, and we also want to see if we get an error here. We get the same issue. Okay, so I still get the issue. I still get the error. Again, please fix it and walk me through it step by step. Make it work for our project, Tube Genius. And sometimes you want to fix this, you want to add this as context, right? Because sometimes I feel like if you kind of force the AI to analyze the project files again, sometimes it finds the issue a bit better for some reason. So we'll hit enter once more and let's see what Windsurf comes up with. The error suggests we have JSON parsing issues and a problem with the error response. Let's fix each part. So let's see, we'll refresh. So we still get the error. I probably have to fix this off camera and then I will get back to you once I'm finished. So I had to do a little bit of back and forth because apparently the first time I asked Windsurf to implement the caching, so let me see, where was this? I think it was at the top somewhere for all those errors. Yeah, okay, so connected to the backend with React queries so that we can store the video search and so on. And if we have a look at the route, unfortunately, Windsurf tried to implement its own caching algorithm or caching function, which, well, is obviously not what we wanted, right? So we wanted it to use React query, or especially our use video search hook and the, let me see, the query provider where we have the setting. So for example, GC time is set to not 1 minute, but not 1 hour, but like, what's it like? So, but now, as you can see, we display the video cards. Now, apparently it looks a bit off, right? We still have to add a feature where we, well, basically cut off, or where we only display an excerpt of the description so that the video cards are not so long. But other than that, another thing that we can do is we can go ahead and go into our dashboard page and delete the video card like so, because we don't need this anymore. So if I comment that out, you can see that we only display the video grid, right? And this is kind of what we wanted. And we'll also delete the user debug feature here because this just looks fucking shitty. Great. Now we can finally cross this off our to-do list. Again, I will probably fix this off camera. This is just some easy prompting and we can easily do this. But as you can see, so let me check. So we have with anyone with AI, anyone can be a coder now. So let me check. If we get the correct user metrics, anyone can be a coder now. So we have 240,000 views, and let me check if this is indeed the correct metric. And indeed it is. We have 25.6 million subscribers for TED, which is also correct. Neat. So this feature works. And now again, we can cross this off our to-do list, as I've said, and head over to the next feature. Okay, so I prompted Windsurf to fix the description length. It looks much cleaner now. Of course, we still have some minor styling issues, for example, with the video metrics here, that they aren't on the same height. But again, these are just some minor details, right? The next step now is to go ahead, tell Windsurf to add everything to the to-dos file, and then lay out the plan for the next steps. And another thing you will realize is if we switch back to our application and we search for, I don't know, cooking fries, then we search for AI coding, and then we search for cooking fries again, you can see that the results are immediately there, right? So we have absolutely no delay between searching for a query we've already searched for, and this is exactly what we want, right? So this is the caching power of React query and Zustand state management in combination. This is Daniel from the future. So unfortunately, I am not able to show you the exact implementation process of how I was able to make Zustand, React query, and adding the search results to the database work together because, well, to be honest, I had to do a lot of back and forth, and it was not really a linear process. And I definitely found a few issues with the documentation process, right? And I will update them in a future video. So let's quickly head over to the application and I'll show you what I did in the past. I don't know, it took like 30 to 45 minutes, I believe. So if you have a look at the application now, you can see that we can search for different queries. I can also refresh the page and the search results persist, right? Before that, when I refreshed the page, the problem was that, well, the search results were empty. And now you also notice that if I search for a different query, for example, I search for fries, and then I search for cooking fries once more, and I search for AI coding, you can see that the results were shown quickly, right? The results were shown faster. Now, the thing is, if we have a look at the database now, I add all of the search results to the database and I can use them as a cache, so to speak. But I can also search for a completely new search results. For example, learn Python programming. And as you can see, this took a little bit longer and was also added to the database successfully, as you can see here, learn Python programming. Now, we are still using React Query and Zustand for everything, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to display the search results even after refreshing the page. And I've tried to ask Windsurf to kind of walk me through the process, what I did for the past few minutes. Okay, so I will walk you through the prompt to give you at least a little bit of understanding what I did, or at least what I got Windsurf to do. Okay, so it said, here's a comprehensive breakdown of implementing the search functionality. So the initial problem was that we needed to implement a YouTube video search feature. Search results should persist across page reloads. Results should be cached to reduce API calls, and the UI should stay responsive and handle errors gracefully. Now, the solution implementation was that we needed to kind of update the Prisma schema a bit so that we can index the search query, and we also needed to change the API routes structure, as you can see here. So first we handle the API search, we handle the YouTube search on a specific route, and we have the cache route, and we also use state management with Zustand. So this is for persisting the search results even when we refresh the page. And the search for flow implementation was, first the user initiates a search, then we kind of try to fetch the cached videos based on the query, and this is what React Query is doing for us. It's communicating with the server so that the server fetches the results from the database, and then we use Zustand to display it in the front end, right? So this is kind of the explanation I gave earlier when I drew the stuff on the screen, if you remember. And then we had to do, we are doing the state, and then we are making the state updates. So we update the UI, we store the query, and we cache for later. And the key components working together is the database with Prisma, so the primary storage for the cached videos. We store the video with either search queries, provide fast retrieval for subsequent searches. Then we use Zustand to manage the UI state, persist the data in local storage, and we use React Query to handle API calls and caching. And again, I will upload this project to GitHub so that you can read through the code, but this would unnecessarily increase the video length, right? And the search flow now is the user enters a search query, we check the database cache. If we found the search query, we return the cached results. If not, we continue to step 3, which is searching the YouTube API. And then we again store the results in the database for future searches. We use Zustand store for UI and persistence. And then we update the UI with the results. So we have the fast subsequent searches. We can persist the results across the reload. And this is basically what I was able to, get Windsurf to do. But as I've said, it was a lot of back and forth. I tried to, essentially what I did was linking the different files and increase the code or improve the code with every prompt a little bit. And again, it's just an iterative process, right? I mean, you can use the documentation as much as you want, but it's kind of like the dude that commented under my last video, where he said something like, okay, yeah, you've created a workflow for yourself, but the issue that you have with the AI not listening to your requests basically will persist unless you use a knowledge graph to connect everything together. And I definitely have to do a bit more research about that, and I will update the workflow accordingly. But nevertheless, I was able to make it work, and at the end of the day, this is all that counts, right? Now I told Windsurf to update the progress file and also the to-dos file, okay? And now the next step for me was to get it to plan the next implementation steps. I basically told it that in some of the to-dos, it had already checked to-dos as complete, for example, transcript fetching, but this is not correct, right? So if we head back over to the application and we click view transcript, the modal opens, but we only see the headline of the video and not the transcript. So we still need to add this functionality. And as I said, I mean, if I click the view transcript button on the card with a D, a modal opens, yes, but I don't see the transcript and so on. So the answer was, let me correct the to-dos and outline our next steps. You're absolutely right. I incorrectly marked some items as complete. Here's the actual state. So we have the search functionality with the caching. We have the basic video card display. We have the modal structure for the transcript, but we still need the actual transcript fetching and display. We need the AI idea generation, so the DeepSeek integration, and we need the chat interface for idea refinement. So basically, if we click generate ideas, we see something, but this is just hard coded, right? And we have this for all videos basically. So we want to add the feature that if we click generate ideas, we make a request to DeepSeek with the video title, and we immediately see 3 AI generated video title ideas. And then I also want to search for another keyword here under customized idea and get more video ideas. And the next thing that we need is we also want to add a button, I don't know, maybe next to the video and also in the modal where we fetch the transcript so that we can use this content to then head back over to the chat route and talk with DeepSeek about the transcript and the title to further enhance the results. So this is the idea, okay? Let's see if we can make it work. So let's head back over to Windsurf and create the YouTube transcript API integration, add the transcript fetching endpoint and so on. So we'll do the first step and then we will ask Windsurf to connect everything to our stores and to React query. Before that, I want to update the to-do file, okay? Please update the to-dos MD accordingly to display the correct to-dos and update progress to, then start with the video transcript feature. So the idea is that the user is able to display the transcript by clicking the transcript button of the card component, and we want to link that card. What's it called? It's called video card, right? So we also need a button in the modal that we can use to pass the transcript to DeepSeek later, but just add the dummy button. I don't want you to do too many steps at once. Just focus on the transcript feature for now and that you connect everything properly with our current project structure. Query, Zustand, and let's head back over to the database. So we probably have to add another field and call it transcript so that we can save it in the database, right? So let's see if Windsurf is able to understand the query, or the prompt rather. So I will run npx prisma db push so that I add the new field to the video table. So let's quickly check if this worked. Yes, we have the transcript here. So we have it as a null field. We probably have to define it as an empty string. Otherwise we will get an error in the database. So let's do accept all. Say I've pushed the new schema to the database manually. Please finish the feature implementation if there's still something you need to do. Okay, yeah, still doesn't work. So let's see. Again, we have to change the import type. So we need to import it from lib, and then it's called db. And we also need to install Google APIs. So let's do npm I Google APIs. And we have to change the import statement to Next.js server. So let's do legacy peer deps. And we need to await this here. So let's see, we still get an issue, but this is a type error. So let's quickly save this. Failed to load transcript. Okay. Do we get an error here? Yes. So it says failed to fetch transcript. Let's see. Do we see anything in the console? Let's do refresh and let's do view transcript. This is all we get. I see. We get an internal server error. We want to copy those errors and we want to head over here and we want to paste it. We still get an error. Also, I'm not sure if you're using React query. Let's see. We've worked on the Prisma schema video card to add the transcript to the database with a new query hook. Please check and connect all parts accordingly. So, and these are the things that you could also define in your Windsurf rules file, right? You could say that it should always pay attention to connecting all of the tools that we're using so far, right? Because otherwise, well, you kind of have to tell it manually every time. And well, we still get the same issue as it seems. Let's see. I probably have to kill the server and look for the error. So still failed to load transcript. You want to copy the error from the console. Okay, so it says fixed environment variable name from next public YouTube API key to YouTube API key. I don't know why, because inside of our .env file, it's called next public YouTube API key. Okay, so let's change this. So once again, I'm just copy pasting the error, right? So here's the terminal errors. Please use chain of thought reasoning to find the core issue and fix it. Walk me through it step by step. So let's fix the API route. So we probably restart the server just for good measure to see if anything changes. So let's hit refresh. Okay, yeah, we have to search for something again. So apparently it didn't change the environment variable. So the changes I made updated the YouTube API key from next public YouTube to YouTube API key, improved error handling. And now we need to update the API route to use the server-side environment variable. So on route, we probably now use the YouTube API, so the correct API variable. So let me see in, well, where is it? Not in stores, but client. Okay, let's see. Let's see. View transcript. We still get some issues, but we get a 401, which is great, which means we don't have access to the API for some reason. API keys are not supported by this API. Expected OAuth 2 access token or other authentication credentials that assert a principal. Okay, this is not a big deal because everything that we need to do is we need to create a client in the Google dashboard. Let's do the following. So as you can see here, we have something in the terminal. So let's copy that, the request or the response rather, and we'll paste that here. And we tell Windsurf, please tell me what to do. And it will probably go ahead and tell us, well, you have to go to Google. You have, as you can see, I see the issue. The YouTube's API captions download endpoint requires OAuth authentication, not just an API. Let's modify our approach to use the YouTube data API V3 time text endpoint instead, which only requires an API key. Okay, so maybe this has already resolved the issue. So let's see. We still get some errors, which says error in use video script, error to fetch transcript, sending request with video ID. Okay. We found something, but no transcript data received. So I feel like we're close. So again, let's copy the whole response and we'll do accept all, paste that here, and then we'll wait for Windsurf's response. I noticed that we need to modify the time text URL to include more parameters. Let me update the transcript route with better logging and URL construction. Okay, and this is really all you need to do, right? It's back and forth. Again, you can have the proper documentation, but you also have to realize that the documentation is also for you to understand the process of how to create the app at the end of the day, right? So this is why you still want to do your research. You still want to learn about the different concepts so that you can guide Cascade to basically write the code for you. I don't know how it will be like in I don't know, 2 years, 1 year, 3 years from now. Maybe we will at some point hit the threshold where you just have to tell Windsurf, oh, please build me XYZ app, and it goes ahead and basically does everything completely automatically for you. But right now, this is kind of where we're at, right? We'll do retry. And now we have more that we can copy paste to Windsurf. So let me quickly do this. Where is it? After analyzing the errors, I see we need to use a different approach. Let's try using YouTube Transcript API. Let's do this. Again, we need to use legacy peer depths, right? Attempted import error Cheerio does not contain a default export. So node modules. This is kind of weird because we can't do much about it. This seems to be an issue in the package. So let me quickly restart the server to see if... I don't get it. This is a dependency error. So let's quickly find the file. Index.js in YouTube Transcript. So we have to open node modules, YouTube Transcript API in source and index. And this needs to be like so. Again, so let's restart the server. Imported as Cheerio was not found in Cheerio. For some reason, something is off with the import statement, right? Maybe because we're using React 19. So let's accept this package. So let's reload. Oh, finally, it works. Okay, this is awesome. Now let's see. Okay. Fuck, the button is at the bottom, so this is apparently not a good user experience, right? But, well, we can easily change this in Windsurf. So first of all, let's hit accept all. And now we'll do git add and git commit, edit feature, fetch YouTube video transcript, and display in modal. So this worked, but can you please put the generate idea from transcript button in the modal at the top, because right now the user has to scroll to the bottom to see it, which is not a good UX. So this should only take a second. And now let's move to the top. And here we have the generate ideas from transcript button. So this is great. Now we can probably head over to the next feature. And we even successfully added the transcript to the corresponding video, as you can see here. So video is larger than 10,240 characters. Nope. I don't want to load everything. Okay, so now we can go ahead. So first let's have a look at the to-dos. Okay, so what we did was we now fetched the video transcript. We created the endpoint. We add the transcript fetching to video card, create the transcript modal, and so on. And now we can basically head over to the DeepSeek integration, which is nice. And then we can finally generate us some nice and juicy video title ideas with AI. So again, I will tell Windsurf to update the progress file, and I will get back to you as soon as I start with the next feature. I've updated the progress file, and now we can finally head over to the next step, which is the DeepSeek integration. And after that, we're gonna tackle the idea generation. And so that we can generate the generate ideas button, the user will be redirected to the ideas route, and we will have 3 AI generated video ideas based on the YouTube video title from the card. Let's tell Windsurf I want to tackle the next feature according to PRD, which is the idea generation point 3. Now for that, I need you to analyze to-dos, not dialog footer. I need you to analyze to-dos and database schema, because if we have a look at the database, so let's see, we store the ideas, right? So we need a title, we need the content, and we need a created at timestamp. So basically the title will probably be the video title, right? And the content will be an array of title ideas, right? I guess this is what we're going to implement, or what Windsurf is going to implement, to get an understanding of how we will store the AI generated ideas in the database. Could you please use chain of thought reasoning to create a step-by-step plan that we need to follow in order to add this feature? No code yet, just plan. If you think I missed something in the documentation files, please tell me. Don't just follow blindly. And again, we want to link the documentation again. So we need to set up the DeepSeek integration, the API client with proper error handling. We need to create the TypeScript interfaces for the requests and responses. We also need to implement rate limiting and API key management. Then we need to update the database schema. So we have to verify that in the saved ideas table, the schema is complete. We have to add the source video ID, the type, metadata, and status and tags. And then we need to create this Zustand store for ideas management. And in the second phase, we'll create the API endpoints. So basically, we will have 3 different API endpoints. So we'll have one, if we click on generate ideas, this will be the first API endpoint. Then we'll have a separate API point where when we pass an idea, so for example, we click on generate ideas, and we will have a button here probably where we can click it, and we will be redirected to the chat route with the idea. This will be the refine API route, and we can also save the ideas to the idea history. We need a few different hooks: use generate idea, use refine idea, use save idea. This will be handled by React Query, right? The last step is to basically display the changes that we made in the backend, so to speak, so in the part of the application that the user doesn't see, and we somehow need to display this in the front end, right? And the last phase is the integration with the current application. Before we start with the plan, please go ahead and update to-dos accordingly so that we can keep track of what we've already done. And by the way, the problems that we have are mostly type issues, right? As you can see here, type string null is not assignable, yada. We can ignore this for now, but we'll definitely fix those at the end when we are nearly finished with the application. We made the changes to to-dos, which is great. So we'll do accept all. And now I'd say we start with the first step, which is the setup of the DeepSeek API client and the type definitions and the environment variables. Please set up the DeepSeek API client, add the error handling, set up API, key management, type definitions, and so on. Maybe we have to provide Cascade with a code snippet for the DeepSeek API, right? So we'll see about this. Unfortunately, it created a new environment variable file. Or did it? Yes. Okay, so we'll just copy all of those environment variables and we'll put it into the .env file. First of all, we need to head over to the DeepSeek platform. You need to create an account. And by the way, this will cost a little bit of money, right? So all you have to do is to top up your balance. I think you can even use $2, right? Yes. And then you click on API keys, create a new API key. We'll call this Tube Genius, and we'll copy that, head over here and paste it here. And now let's see what we need to do. We have the type definitions, we have the rate limiter, we have the client.ts file, we have the config file. We even went ahead, or Windsurf even went ahead and created a unit test. So we'll do accept all. We're not using OpenAI. So let's do the following. We need to copy that and we'll head over here and we say the implementation of the client is not correct. Here's a code snippet for you to understand how to create it and use the OpenAI SDK for it. Let's delete the test folder. We need a way to test the connection. Please tell me how to do it without using tests. We don't need this. And I will delete the... Okay, so it seems that it is working, because if I access the API/AI/test route, you can see, let me quickly make this a bit bigger. It says success, true, message, connection successful. How can I assist you today? Modal, DeepSeek chat. So let's check that again. This works. So connection successful and now counting until 50, which is great. Okay, so now we can have a look at to-dos. As you can see, we created the API client and set up the API key, type definitions, the environment variables, and now we can head over to the idea generation. So the next step is to generate the idea to create the idea generation. For that, we'll tell Cascade, please have a look at idea generation in to-dos, more specifically the idea generation. We apparently need to update the database schema to be able to generate the ideas based on the YouTube video titles. So here's the workflow I need you to implement. User clicks generate, and let's have a look how this works, how this is called. So let's go to dashboard and generate ideas. Okay, clicks the generate ideas button in video card. What's the component called? Okay, video card. The video title will be passed to DeepSeek and it will generate a list of 3 video title ideas. Those video title ideas will then be displayed on the ideas route. And if we click on ideas, or if we click on generate ideas in the videos ideas section, so in the daily video ideas section, so let me see, the route is called ideas and we want to display it in the first section. Let's see if Windsurf is able to understand this. Maybe this is too unprecise, but we'll see about that. Video ideas will also be stored in the database and displayed as a list in the idea. It's called idea history, right? We don't have this yet in the ideas history route. Don't write all at once. Split the plan into smaller tasks to ensure connecting everything to our current infrastructure with React Query and Zustand and Supabase. Please create a plan first. Well, we don't really need this, right? Because we already told it to have a look at to-dos. Okay, so first of all, I will do a git add and git commit, edit feature, DeepSeek API integration. Windsurf is finished with the detailed plan, but I think this is a little bit too much because I don't really know why we need this type field, because all we want to store is the video title, right? So before you start, please check. Before you start implementing this, please explain to me why we need to add a type field, because in the video idea, in the saved ideas table, we only want to store the video title ideas, right? I know we will also be using the scripts to talk with DeepSeek, but I think we should add an additional table for that. So could you please explain if this is necessary, or if we could just the current content field that we have inside of the ideas table, and we want to link the schema Prisma for that. Okay, so if we are only storing video title ideas, we don't need a type field. The current structure with the title and content field is actually a bit redundant for our use case. Since we're only storing title ideas, we could simplify this by either just using the content field or just using the title field. However, we do need to add the source video ID to track which video inspired these title ideas. Here's my revised suggestion for the schema. So we'll copy that. We'll do this manually. Where's the schema file? Here it is. Okay, and we need the saved idea. There it is. Okay, so we'll quickly paste this here. We'll save this and we'll do npx Prisma. Let's check if this worked. And yes, indeed, we have added the source video ID, which is nice. I've added the new schema manually, so you can actually go ahead and proceed with the next steps. So we don't need to do this because, well, we've already pushed it to the database, right? But I was imprecise in my explanation. So first, let's implement the API route, and this should go ahead and create a new ideas route, generate. Okay, great. Again, we need to use the server package, and we also need to change this to Prisma. So let's do this once Windsurf is finished. Okay, so we need to use Prisma. Delete that. So do we have DB somewhere else? Okay, so this is, and we also need to await this here. And we want to do this like so. So let's see, if we now go to the dashboard, and we click on, okay, now we have two generate ideas buttons, which is unfortunate, but well, what can you do about it? So we have to go to video cart, and let's see, where's the second button? So we want to use this, put it here, and we can delete this button. And we also want to save this. And now if we click generate ideas, we probably get an error. So let's see. Let me see if this works. So we'll take fries. So we do get something, but the question is it the correct thing? So let me see. How to improve how French fries are made. Ah, yeah, okay. So we definitely get something back because you can see those are basically three different titles, right? How to improve how French fries are made in Mega Factory with modern food processing. So seems to work. We just have to work on the response a bit. So what we want actually is let me check something. So we'll need to have a look at ideas. So we delete those because this is hard coded, right? So let me save this. And now we see that we, well, don't see anything, right? So this feature doesn't work yet. So I don't know if the API call actually works because, well, I can't see anything. The only thing I can see in the terminal is the get request. Could you add something like a log statement so that I can see if we get something back from the request? And if you can, please also go ahead and change the correct section in the ideas route so that we display the video ideas as bullet points in the correct section at the top. Okay, so it says internal server error, so something doesn't work. So, but this is good. Okay, so as you can see, we get something back. So let's do accept all here. And then we need to do a few things. So first of all, I want to paste that here just without saying anything. We'll see if Windsurf is able to figure it out. Okay, yeah. We want to clean them up before saving to the database. So do we actually see something yet? No, probably not. Now we probably want to go ahead and change the response body of the API request, right? Because we could easily let DeepSeek create a JSON object, and then it's easier to parse the data. I will probably do this off camera because, again, this is just the nitty-gritty stuff, right? If I would record everything that I'm doing to create this application, I would probably need like 8 to 9 hours or something. So we'll refresh and then we'll try to generate the ideas. There's still something off. So let me restart the server. So there's an issue in the video card component. I think it's like so, right? Guys, so let me give you a quick update. As you can see, we can now display the video ideas in the ideas section. So if I head back over to the dashboard, and don't mind in the background, Windsurf is still writing some code. This is why the site keeps refreshing, but let's wait until it's finished. So let me quickly refresh just to make sure that everything is working. And now if we click we need to make this a bit smaller. So now if we click the generate ideas button, this should take a second, then we will be redirected to the ideas page. and 3 new video ideas based on our initial video title, which is Top 5 AI Coding Assistants, Revolutionize Your Coding, Best AI Tools. Okay, and if we switch back over here, you can see that we make a request to DeepSeek. These are the generated title ideas. We parse them and then we save them to the database. And if we switch back over to TubeGenius, we add the new generated video title ideas to the database. This was actually much easier than expected because it was just kind of a iterative process. So let me show you the implementation for full transparency. To be honest, I was caught up in an error loop for a few minutes because Windsurf again tried to build its own solution, not relying on the React query implementation and the Zustand store and so on. So I had to go a little bit of back and forth. Then we had the error that there was a mismatch between the types. So for example, Windsurf tried to implement the feature in a way that we use the Clerk ID for the user ID column, but this doesn't work. So I had to specifically tell it to change this, to go into the users table, search for the user ID, which starts with BD, as you can see here, and then it compared the Clerk user to the user ID and stores the user ID inside of the table. So this was the problem that I encountered. But here's the thing, quickly change the person recording. So here's the thing, you can't really fix this with proper documents, right? Still, I have to improve a lot about them. I've already told you this. But the problem is that you still need to understand what could go wrong, right? You can plan all you want, but if you have absolutely no idea of what is happening, it becomes incredibly hard to create a proper documentation, right? This is why with this channel, I really want to teach and show you a hybrid approach where you still learn how to code, or at least learn principles, and you are even able to code some things yourself for simple projects. And from there, you can use AI to build on top of your base knowledge, so to speak. Without it, well, I'm not sure if it's possible. So maybe the prompt is not good enough, but I've tried it on a different project a few days ago. That's the reason why I shared it with you guys, right? But this was a much easier project without different routing and all of these things that we're doing in this video idea generator, right? Let's head back over to the application. And as you can see, we redirect the user to this URL, right? So the ideas, and then we add the YouTube video title and the video ID. And now if I refresh the page, the AI generated titles persist, right? Because we're again using the Zustand store and React query to handle everything. Works. This also works. And now we can head back over to the next implementation step, which is adding the idea history. And for that, we'll go to Windsurf. First of all, we'll do git add, git commit. Great. So this works too. And I also want to have the feature that we display all of the generated video title ideas in the idea/history route. So could you please go ahead and create a new API route for this so that we can properly fetch the generated video title ideas with React query from the database, and then use Zustand in addition to that to properly display them in the UI. This will probably create a new folder inside of the ideas folder, which is called history, as you can see here. And maybe let me increase the size again. We create a new hook to fetch the history, as you can see here, add ideas history. Now this doesn't exist yet. We still have to create it, and Windsurf just did it. And now we also create a new route page. I don't know what it's called, probably idea history. So the ideas history page. Okay, let me see. Can we access it? So we can't because we still link to the history route. So we should probably be able to do this manually. Let's go to the main nav. We probably have to do it like so. Is this correct? We want to go to ideas history. So, okay, we need to add use client to the use ideas history to the history page. Okay, so let's see. Where is the history page? It's here, and we want to add the use client directive. Okay, so great. Now we have all of the past video title ideas that we've generated so far, which is neat. Maybe we could change the video idea at the top to something more suitable, which is the video title. But other than that, this looks pretty nice. Now we can finally add the last feature to our application, and then we're done, guys, which is great. So let's head back over here. And the last step that we need to implement is the chat window, right? So what we want to do here is the user should be able to fetch the transcript like so. And then we want to pass this transcript to DeepSeek once again, but redirect to the chat window. And we want to we also want to receive an answer from DeepSeek where it says something like, okay, based on the transcript, I created this and this video title idea. Do you want to change anything? And then just start a conversation, okay? And we also want to store everything inside of the database. So we probably have to do some preparations because right now we only have the saved ideas. We have the users and we have the videos. We probably need to add a new table. So I will head over to Windsurf, plan the next steps. And for that, I've prepared the following prompt. So I want you to have a look at state management, PRD, and to-dos to lay out the next steps for the chat implementation. Here's the essential workflow. So the user clicks the generate ideas from transcript button in video card. The video transcript of the corresponding video is passed to DeepSeek and used to start a conversation about some possible video ideas and the corresponding script. The user can then chat with the DeepSeek model in the chat window in the chat route. So please create a step-by-step plan how to implement this. Use the code snippets and the info you can get from the documentation files, but don't just follow them blindly. If you need to enhance specific parts of it to make it work with TubeGenius, so with our current project structure, do it. We probably also have to add a new table to the database for this feature to work. So please check schema.prisma too. I want the user to be able to access past LLM conversations too. For now, just plan. No need to write the code yet. And we'll hit enter. So let's have a look at Windsurf's answer. So we definitely need to add new models. The chat model, we need to add the message model, and we need to create the chat state and different API routes. So API chat start, API chat message, and API chat history. But this is not correct, right? So we don't really need to enhance the video card with the chat about video button because we already have the button here, right? We probably have to guide Windsurf there a bit. So for this last feature, I will probably just ask Windsurf to implement it right away. I won't tell it to add all of the to-dos to the to-dos list because to be honest, I just want to be done with it so that I can head over to the next project, which is also pretty interesting. I'm going to build a RAG agent that has access to my YouTube videos, and I will give it access to the Discord server. So we'll see how this goes. I would say we'll start with the implementation prompt. So we already have the generate new ideas transcript button in video card, so no need to create a new chat about video button. Please use the current one. I also want to update the prompts.ts file, and if we have a look at that one, I added the analyze transcript property, as you can see here. So you're an expert YouTube content analyst and creative advisor. And this is essentially just to have the, prompt for the chat analysis, right? Because what I actually want to do, I will explain in this workflow. The user searches for a video. We already have implemented this. He clicks on the transcript button and the script is fetched, already implemented. Then he clicks on the generate new ideas from transcript button. The transcript is then passed to DeepSeek together with the new corresponding prompt from prompt.ts. The user is redirected to the chat route, sees an excerpt of the selected script in the chat window, and receives the first answer from DeepSeek, where the model asks him if he wants to get video title ideas based on the script, or if he wants to work on the script to change it, improve it, make it his own. And the conversation starts, and the user can then chat with the DeepSeek until he gets the desired result. The messages and the conversation are stored to Supabase. So maybe I can make this even bigger for you guys. So we need a way to display the message history in the front end in a non-intrusive way. And please go ahead and update your current plan with the new information. And based on the workflow description, here's an updated plan. So it gave me the prompt for prompts.ts. We also have to add new data models to the schema.prisma file. So for chat and message, we create a new chat interface. And this is partly taken from our documentation file inside of state management, because we already have the let me see, chat state in here. As you can see, we have messages, loading is error, and so on. Then we needed to update the video card component. I haven't done this yet. Okay, so this is essentially just to push the user to the chat route. Once he clicks the get video, generate ideas from transcript button. And here we have the chat interface components. Now, this was a little bit of back and forth because Windsurf tried to mix things up, and I wanted to have, well, a clear separation of concerns between the files. So as you can see here, we have the phase 1, which is the core setup, updates Prisma schema, and run migration. We still need to do this. I basically copy pasted all the files, created them manually, and then I told it that there are still some missing files in chat history drawer, in chat messages. We can't import from chat message because it doesn't exist. Fix it. And the same goes for the chat header, chat messages, chat input, and so on. And I wanted it to use chain of thought reasoning to come up with a solution to these problems while respecting the current structure of the Tube Genius project. Once you fix the issues, update your plan and walk me through it. After that, it gave me the new code for the files. I basically just approved the changes. And then I was trapped in a small debugging loop because, well, there was something off with the synchronization between Zustand, client-side state management, and React query. So I had to paste a few errors here and there, and I was able to resolve this part with the, where is it, the last prompt. So let me see. Yeah, okay, so still the same issue, and I pasted the other error because essentially I would see 3 different errors, right? I tried Windsurf to get to resolve the second one because the first one is still regarding my Chrome extension, so we can neglect that. And after that, I asked it to resolve the third issue, which was basically part of the second, if that makes sense. And after that, it added the correct code to connect React query with Zustand, and then it was able to resolve the issue. And right now you see the loading state because, well, we don't have any messages in the backend yet. We also haven't created the data models, and the prompt that I want to use right now is the following. So essentially I just took the initial plan with the different phases that we need to take in order to create the chat feature, and I ask Windsurf to double check if we've now done everything that we need to do in order to tackle the implementation. So now that we've restructured the code, I want you to check if we've prepared everything that we need in order to finish the chat interface from to-dos. I paste all of those different folders and files as context because those are the files that are necessary to create this chat feature, right? And hopefully I will get the updated plan. So here's the thing. The documentation up until this point worked quite well. However, I realized some flaws because it needs to be even more precise in some situations, especially when it comes to documenting how the different components work together, right? Because you have to pass a lot of data between those components, and there are essentially a lot of small steps that you need to take to make a feature like the chat feature, or even just the ideas generation that we currently have, to make it work, right? And I will probably update the workflow in a way that it is even more granular, because if you have a look at the documentation right now, again, this is just what you want, right? The how you want to build it is a completely different thing. And I will think about a way how to integrate those two different aspects into the documentation. And I will definitely check out the option of using a knowledge graph. Someone has commented that under the last video. I still didn't have the time to check this out, but I will definitely do this in the next few videos to see if I can improve the workflow. But for now, just be prepared that the documentation is a living thing, right? You want to update it from time to time when you find specific things during the development process that you haven't thought about, or that the LLM wasn't able to add to the documentation. You need to add it manually, and you have to use an iterative process to keep your documentation updated at all times, if that makes sense. But now let's hit enter for this prompt. As you can see, we have basically finished only the layout, so to speak, so what we can see on the chat route, but that's enough, right? Because now we can tackle the different features, and we also need to add the data models to the Supabase, and we also need to add the data models to the database. So since I've already added a new schema to the Prisma file, I will just run in npx Prisma db push. So if we switch back here and we have a look at the database, we should now have the different data models added to the database. Okay, here is the chats table and also the messages table, and this is essentially what we need. And now I will again ask Windsurf to add the updated plan to the to-dos so that we can keep track of everything at all times. So Windsurf has added the new to-dos to the to-dos checklist, but I want to go the extra mile and I want to ask it one more time. So please have a look at schema.prisma again and check if we have actually prepared the database for this chatting feature. I want to store the conversation, so the messages of the LLM, but also of the user, so that the user can access them later on. Again, the workflow is get transcript, pass the transcript to DeepSeek, get initial message as described above, have conversation until desired result. The conversation should be stored to the user and the corresponding video. Please repeat what I just told you so that I can be sure you understood the objective. So we'll hit enter and we'll have one more iteration. So the user selects a video and gets its transcript. The transcript is passed to DeepSeek. DeepSeek provides an initial message, analyzing the transcript and offering help with either title or ideas. This is correct. User can then have conversations with DeepSeek about the video content. This entire conversation needs to be stored and associated with both the specific user, the specific video. Looking at the current schema, I see some potential improvements. The chat model should have a type field to distinguish between different chat purposes, title generation versus script improvement, a status field to track the chat state, maybe a summary field to help users quickly identify chat topics. The message model should have a more specific role type, currently just a string. Possibly a metadata field for additional message properties like tokens used, completion status. Here's my suggested schema update. So we'll copy that, we'll head over to the schema.prisma file and we'll paste that here. So let me quickly add this, we'll save this, we'll do npx prisma db push again. So this worked. And for the chat as well, I believe, yes. Okay, so this is awesome. I already pushed the updated schema to the database. So we can proceed with the first step. And the first step is, if we have a look at to-dos, we want to create the different API routes with the first step, which is creating the API routes, I believe. Now, make sure you integrate this with our current state management solutions for Zustand and make it work for this project. Because sometimes you can get like standard solutions, right? And I mean, they might work, but not with your project. And then you have to dabble back and forth until you get what you want. This is why I like to add this part to the prompt. And again, we have to manually change a few imports. So we could add this to the cursor rules file, but well, it doesn't take too much time. This is why I will just do it manually. And by the way, there are also a few things that we need to update for query. So for example, it's not is loading, it's is pending. Those are also things that you could add to your Windsurf rules file, right? So let me quickly check the other files. So we need to import this from server, and this is actually libdb. And we need to await this here. So I guess that's about it, right? Yeah, okay, so this is a type error. We can ignore this for now. Let's save this. Let's do the same for the other routes, and then I will get back to you. So now that I've added, or that I made the changes, I will now ask Cascade if I can already test this feature. Probably not, because we still have to do a few more things. So if we have a look at to-dos, we created the different API routes, error handling, and we need to connect this to the video card component and make sure the generate new ideas from transcript button initiates the chat. And again, for such complicated tasks, I like to use the chat mode, right? Because I have more control over the implementation process. I can read through the code, try to understand it, and then I can manually approve it. And this is much better than just using the right feature and basically be at the mercy of Windsurf, right? So we'll apply this. Let's do the same for the... So before we do this, let me actually go ahead and check if the feature of the idea generation still works. Yeah, okay, so great. Windsurf hasn't deleted anything, which is nice. So I need to make this a bit smaller. So let me see. We have the generate titles. So here's something that we don't want it to do, right? So because in the prompts section, it deletes the general title ideas property, and we don't want this, because if we would do this, this feature wouldn't work anymore. Right? So I will definitely not approve this code change. What I will do though is I will manually check if this new analyze transcript property is worth adding to the prompts file. So let me quickly check. Here's the prompts file, and we have the analyze transcript. Yeah, I guess we'll try it with the first script because this is essentially the same. And I see the general titles is still there, but it has a different name. So maybe we don't want this. So now let's update the video card component to use our new chat functionality. So we'll have a look at the preview. So this is also not what we want, because it deleted the other feature, right? So if we have a look at the dashboard, if we would now click generate ideas, it wouldn't work anymore because Windsurf deleted that feature. So what we will do is also not accept the change and tell Windsurf to improve on that. So we already have this file. We can hit apply and approve. And now we have the chat layout. Well, we don't need to do much about that, right? So those files do already exist. Okay. Okay, so please have a look at, and it's called chat card. What's it called actually? Video card. I don't want to add the feature to the generate ideas button, but first the user has to press the transcript button, then a modal opens, and inside of the modal is the button I want to have the feature of passing this stuff to DeepSeek. And we already have chat input, chat messages, chat layout, and so again, I make sure that I have enabled the chat feature. And also you probably want to restructure the video card a bit, because as you see, well, 200 lines of code, I mean, it's not that big, but we can reduce this even more by making all of those different components inside of here. So for example, this part with the headline and the description, a single component, this part with the metrics, a single component, and this would make our video card a lot cleaner, right? So let's see, we'll do preview one more time. Okay, so this time it worked, and we now have the new button, Chat with AI. I will probably rename the button once again because it's not descriptive enough. But now we get another error, which essentially is a database error, because I think there's something off. We probably need to add yet another table here, and we need a chat history table, right? So add schema.prisma. To resolve it, we probably need a chat history table, right? And again, usually those are all of the things you would have to think about when creating your documentation, right? Yeah, well, I need to find a way to make this work, and I have a few ideas, and I will probably share some new thoughts in the next few days in the Discord community, and also as a small video maybe, so that you can have the updated workflow. And I know there will be already people in the comment section, well, I told you so, it doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, whatever. Sometimes you make it work, sometimes you don't. And well, let's just say it didn't work as expected, but not a big deal. Let me see. The schema looks correct with the chat and message models properly defined. The error is coming from the fact that Prisma is undefined in our API routes. We need to make sure we're importing and initializing the Prisma client correctly. Okay, so let me see. We're importing Prisma from lib.db. Where is it here? So I don't know why this wouldn't work. I mean, those are just type errors, right? Yes, okay, so that's not a big deal. Okay, so let's do npx prisma generate, npx prisma db push. Okay, yeah, it's already in sync. Doesn't seem like it. So we'll just paste the error. Please use chain of thought reasoning to find the core issue and resolve it. Walk me through it step by step. I fear we're getting close. And after that, I will immediately start to implement the payment integration. So we probably have to add another column to the users column here where it says, I don't know, not just subscription status, but also free messages or something, so that we can keep track of the generations, of the idea generations. First, let's understand the error. So the argument must be of type object received null. This is happening in both chat history and chat start routes when trying to log errors. The issue appears to be in how we're handling errors. The error is coming from console.error when trying a log value. Let's fix the error handling in both routes. Okay, so preview, we'll do apply, Okay, so I'm one step closer to the solution. Whoa, this was a little bit too big. Now, as you can see, I can successfully pass the script to DeepSeek. Unfortunately, so the problem was in the schema.prisma that Windsurf generated. So let me have a look. Where is it? Here. Okay, so essentially what we tried was to set the UUID through Prisma, but we need to let Supabase handle this in their specific format, so to speak. And now we get a different error which says chat start 500. So but we do get something back, which is nice. So we'll copy all of that and paste it here and say, okay, we do get something back from the API call to DeepSeek, but then we get an error and we are not redirected to the chat route to see the response and be able to start the conversation with the with DeepSeek. Also, we probably have to update the prompt a bit because, okay, so this is essentially just the API request as I can see here, not the response I see. Invalid Prisma chat create. Okay, so I see the issue. Even though we added default UID to the schema, we still need to run npx Prisma generate to update the client. Since you mentioned you can't run migrations, let's modify the code to work with the current setup. You know, that's essentially not what we need. So that's not what I want you to do. So I've ran npx Prisma generate and also npx Prisma db push, but I received the message that the database is already in sync with the Prisma schema. Okay, after a little bit of back and forth, I was able to make it work. The problem was in how Windsurf added the properties to the database communication call, or to the database API call, so to speak. As you can see here, there was a mismatch. So first we wouldn't use the correct ID from the user. It was using the wrong format and not the format of Supabase, right? And now we have the video ID, we add the title, the transcript, and we have an active conversation right now, and we got a summary. As you can see, I have to do some changes when it comes to the formatting of this. This looks not good at all, right? And I also can't send a message, so we still have to figure that out, but well, kind of worked. So let me walk you through the process. I was able to get to this point pretty quickly, but I will definitely update the documentation so that things like the data models are on point, right? Because if you have to change this later on, you will probably end in a debugging loop. You want to have the core things of your application mapped out as good as possible, and the data models are definitely part of it. Essentially, what I'm doing now is just copy pasting the errors to Windsurf. Okay, the initial request to the API works and the redirect to the chat route too. But now I can't send new messages. Here's the terminal errors that I get. Please use chain of thought reasoning to find the issue and resolve it. Also, take into account the other solution you just created for adding this stuff to the DB. Maybe this current issue is related or similar. Want to paste that? So we have the system and the assistant message. We get the metadata with the prompt tokens. So how does this look like? Prompt tokens, completion tokens. This is nice. So let's think through this. The error suggests that we're getting a null payload when trying to log the error. Let's check that chat ownership verification. Similar to our previous fix, we need to get the user's UUID first. The error occurs because we're using Clerk user ID directly in the query, but the chat's user ID is a UUID from our database. So we'll apply this. So this kind of worked. But let's see if we can have a look at the messages. So we get something back, but it is not displayed in the front end, but that's not a big deal. So here we have the user. So this is great. We can now head back over to Windsurf and do it like so. So this kind of worked. Now when I send a new message in the chat route after receiving the initial message, nothing happens for a while, and then the message disappears from the input field, and I can see that it is added to the database as a user message in the correct table, but I don't receive something back from the LLM, and a system message is added too. So the system message is again what we've defined earlier, right? Yeah, okay. Can you please lay out the steps to fix this issue and make it work? No need for code yet. And again, if we have a look at the to-dos, we created all of the API routes, we implemented error handling, and we connected everything to this store and also to React Query. We created the custom hooks, we connected the video card component. Now what we need to do is we need to probably also have to add the chat persistence with the database, because if I refresh the page, I will probably lose this, so I won't do it now. Compare it with to-dos and mark the ones that we have finished with an X. We'll hit enter on this one. So if we have a look at the DeepSeek platform, can we see if we... So this is for today, right? Yes. And so we send... So we create the chat start route, create the message route, we created the chat history, set up store with Zustand, and connect the video card to chat initiation. So we can save this. So please check the files we already have. For the chat messages, for example, we already have a hook. Before you just try to generate something, make it work with our current project. Again, plan for now and wait for my confirmation. We have to add better error logging and also the DeepSeek API response. So I will just go with, okay, do it, and then let me test the feature manually in the browser. Okay, so let's hit accept all. And again, I want to refine the 6th headline. So we definitely have to add specific loading states, right? Because, well, just a bad user experience if nothing happens and then everything happens all at once. So we'll copy that. Here's the terminal logs. So still it gets added to the database and we get something back, as you can see here. Let's refine the 6th headline, AI coding tools. Here are some polished alternatives. Okay. AI coding tools let me down, my curse of frustration. Yeah, okay. I like that one. Let's further enhance the 6th one again. So let's further enhance the 6th one again. We're sending the request. Again, it still doesn't work yet. I still can't see the new messages in the chat window, but they are getting added to the database. So I guess there's still something off with the state management and the UI update, either from Zustand or React query. Please use chain of thought reasoning to fix it and walk me through it. Now, I was able to make it work, so if you have a look at the application in a moment. So the main issue was that it was kind of hard for Windsurf to connect the different state management solutions again. Okay, so state management with React query, updating the database, fetching the stuff from the database, invalidating the query in the correct way. But now, as you can see, I've searched for a keyword. If I click on transcript, I see the transcript, and now I have an additional chat button. So if I click this, you can see that it says chat start, and now we should be redirected to the chat route in a bit. Obviously, I have to add some loading states, but as you can see here, we get the answer from DeepSeek where it says you're an expert YouTube content analyst and creative advisor. Your role is to help content creators repurpose and improve existing video content. And if you remember, the video script that we passed to DeepSeek was about coding is shockingly simple, and essentially this was just a short where someone has written a print statement, right? And now it says here, coding is shockingly uncomplicated until it's not, how to survive the coding roller coaster, and so on. And what we can do now is we can go ahead and say, please take the fifth headline and create exactly one new version of it, and we'll hit send. Now we have this small loading state, as you can see here, and we get an answer from from DeepSeek. And if we switch back over to our database, you can see that we add the chats to the database, and we also add the messages, as you can see here. So with the different roles, user, assistant, and so on. And we also get some information about the metadata. So how much tokens did we use? And basically everything is working now. Now, what I will do now is I will probably leave it at that, because I still want to add the payment integration, and we have to do a few more steps for that, right? We probably have to update the, if we have a look at the database, we probably have to update the free messages for the user. So we have to add another column where it says free idea generations. If you remember, I want to give the user the ability to generate. So if we go to localhost 3000 to our landing page, I want to give the user the option to generate 5 ideas with AI for free. And I still have to do this. And we're already at, I don't know, I think like 3 hours with the video. And I don't want to make it too long for you guys. Now we'll head back over to the payment integration. I again want you to have a look at to-dos and progress, and then add the finished tasks to the progress.md file and mark them with an X in to-do. And after that, I want you to lay out the next steps so that we can start with the payment integration. Okay, yeah, as you can see, we have to add database schema updates. So subscription, we already have a table called subscriptions. We don't have to do that anymore. Don't have the payment history. We need to add this. Update the user table with subscription related fields. We also have some of those, right? Because we say subscription status. However, we need to add another field where we track the free messages that the user has sent. And then we need to create new API routes. Okay. Again, this is a kind of general answer, right? Because for the front-end components, obviously, we already have a pricing page with plan comparison, and we don't have a subscription modal yet. But, well, we will implement this one step at a time. Now, first of all, let's have a look at the to-dos. So it seems that this is comprehensive. So if we have a look at the payment integration, we need the Stripe integration and so on. And if we have a look at the progress file, let me make this a bit smaller and this too. So you can see that we have the video transcript feature, YouTube API integration, and we also have the DeepSeek integration with the ideas management. So for some reason, we need to delete those because we are done with them. So it seems that Windsurf hasn't updated the progress file. It only has edited the to-dos file. So we'll do accept all and say, can you please update the progress file? Also, we already have some of, we'll just do it like so. And if we have a look at the problems, those are mostly type related issues, right? This kind of prevents us from creating a build for the application. So unless we resolve those, we won't be able to host the application, but they are kind of lower priority right now because I really want to finish this thing. I've updated the progress file. Now, as you can see, we have the chat layout component, API integration, state management, which is great. Okay, so we'll do accept all, and then we can proceed with the payment integration. So let's have a look at the plan. First of all, I would say we create a Stripe account and create the product and also the company inside of Stripe. So let's head back over to Stripe and then I will walk you through the process. So inside of Stripe, you want to first create an account, then you want to click the dashboard or you will be automatically redirected to the dashboard, right? So let me quickly log in, and inside of the Stripe account you want to create a new account. Okay, so in my case I will call it Tube Genius, country of operation Germany. Yeah, okay, we'll just go with this one. And now we need a few things. So first of all, we need the environment variables, as you can see here, and you just have to copy and paste them and store them in your environment variable file. And I will do this off camera so that you can see the key. And after that, we also want to create a product, right? So head over to the product catalog and you want to add a product, and then you want to have a recurring payment. And in my case, we'll go with $7.99, but it's US dollar. The name of the product is Premium Subscription, or let's see, what's it called? Pro Subscription. Okay, so we'll call it Pro Subscription for Tube Genius. We don't need a image. Billing period is monthly, and then we'll do add product. Here you need a few more things. We'll ask Windsurf, but if you click on the product and scroll down, you will see that you have the product ID and the price ID, and we will need this later on to set up the API calls for our backend. So just make sure that you remember where you get these things, okay? And the next thing that we need to do if we head over to Windsurf is we also need to set up a webhook endpoint URL. And this will be API webhooks Stripe. And the way we do this is inside of your dashboard, you want to click on developers. And here you want to click on webhooks. And you also want to click on create an event destination. I mean, you can use the old layout, or I think they have a new layout and it's called Workbench. And essentially it's the same thing, just a different design, right? So you want to click on webhooks and then add a destination. And essentially what we need to create is those events to listen for, right? So customer subscription created, customer subscription updated, customer subscription deleted. Let's enter customer subscription. Where do we have it? Created, deleted, and also updated. So where is it? Customer subscription dated. Okay. And we also want to add invoice paid and invoice payment failed. So then you want to click continue and you want to choose webhook endpoint. Click continue. You can see it says here we need an endpoint URL. And if you don't know what this is, essentially we need a live website, so to speak, where Stripe can send its events so that our front end can communicate with Stripe and the back end essentially too. So if you don't know what this means, you can also always go back to Windsurf and say, okay, Stripe says I need to configure an endpoint URL. What do I put there? Do I need to use ngrok? And ngrok is essentially a service that you can use to host your local host, so your development environment on the internet. And it says for development, yes, you'll need ngrok to receive webhook events from Stripe. Here's why and how. Stripe needs a public URL to send webhook events. Your local development server isn't publicly accessible. ngrok creates a secure tunnel to your local server. So we need to install ngrok. I've already done this. And then we need to run ngrok HTTP 3000 in a new terminal. Because remember, right now, our application is running on localhost 3000, right? And if we do ngrok HTTP 3000. Probably have to reduce the size a bit. So we'll copy that and we'll head over here, create a new incognito tab, and we access this. And now if we do visit site, you can see that we can now access the page. Apparently the styling is a bit off. And the reason for that is, well, we kind of have to do a few more things inside of Windsurf, or rather inside of the config files of Next.js. So if you experience an issue, you can always ask Windsurf how to resolve it. Okay, so for example, I told it, okay, my app is broken, the styling doesn't work, and I get a bunch of 404 errors in the terminal. And it says, okay, we need to configure Next.js config. So we'll do apply. Now we also need to set an environment variables for the app to know about the ngrok URL, create or update your env local file. And here you want to add a new file to your .env file. So let's just copy that one here. And then we need to copy the ngrok URL. And by the way, whenever you restart the ngrok server, you will get a different URL, right? When you're on the free plan. So then we have to restart the development server, and we also have to restart ngrok. So probably have to add this public URL once more. Let me see. Now this works, and if we go to the dashboard, we should also able to access our application as usual, right? So if you don't have an ngrok account, you will have to create one after you've installed it in your computer, either with brew, or if you're on Windows, I don't know how you install ngrok, but you have to create an account, and then you will be prompted to add a secret. So unfortunately I can't show you this because, well, I've already installed this, but you will be redirected to the dashboard instead of ngrok. And if you install ngrok via the terminal by using brew, you will be prompted to add a token or a secret so that it can link your account to ngrok, basically. Now that we've done this, we again need to use this URL, copy it, head over to Stripe, paste that here, and we also need to append the specific route, right? So in our case, this is API, webhooks, Stripe. So you want to paste this here, and you want to click Create Destination. And now you basically have set up everything that you need to do. Don't forget to add the secrets to your .env file, right? And now we can start with implementing the feature after we've updated the schema.prisma file. So we'll click preview. You can see that we changed the subscription status and also add 2 more fields, which is the free generations used and last generation time. So we'll do apply. So we'll do npx prisma generate. No, I'm not in the correct directory. So npx prisma generate and npx prisma db push. So it worked without problems. And now, as you can see, after we refresh this, let me see. So database is now in sync. So of course we have to first accept the change for the schema.prisma file, and then we have to do this again. So we have the usage logs now, and we probably have to make the change in the user subscription status manually, right? So because if we have a look at the users table, you can see that we still are on inactive, and well, we probably have to change this to free later on, but we'll see about this. So we've already set up the Stripe product. We've configured the webhook and the webhook events. We've installed ngrok, and now we can basically proceed with the actual setup process. And for that, you can always head over to the to Stripe and to its documentation if you want to learn how to use it. And essentially you can now ask Windsurf to walk you through the process. Okay, so I've set up the webhook endpoint and created the events. ngrok is running, and well, let's see. What else do we need to do? And I've pushed the updated schema to the database, and I also created a product with a subscription side of Stripe. So could you please go ahead and lay out the steps that we need to take to integrate Stripe with our application while respecting the current project structure and tools like query, Zustand, and so on. We'll probably have to create a separate backend folder, right? Or can we just use, I think we can just use Next.js's API or server actions. Or can we just use Next.js 15's server actions for communicating with Stripe? We can use Next.js app router and server actions for Stripe integration. Here's the implementation plan. Maintains our current architecture. So we need the Stripe client. We need the API routes for Stripe, for the webhook, checkout, and the portal. We need the configurations, and also the pricing table, upgrade modal, and so on. Okay, so as for the implementation steps, and I do like to do this manually, so I will do. Let's go ahead and create a new folder called Stripe inside of the lib folder. So we'll call this Stripe. We'll create the client.ts and we copy that here. Save it. And again, this is not the up-to-date API version, right? But we'll leave it at that for now. And we'll see if we can make it work with that. This is likely due to Claude's knowledge cutoff, right? So the next thing that we need to do is libstripe actions.ts. So actions.ts. We'll copy that, paste that here. We need to import that from server. And we also need to install Stripe to resolve the import issue. And again, we have to add legacy peer depths. So we need to create a new hook, call it use subscription hook, copy that, paste it here, and create a subscription store here. So new file, use subscription store. And we also need a webhook handler. So API, app API, Stripe webhooks, app API, new folder, Stripe webhooks, and we'll call this route.ts and we'll paste the file. Usage tracking middleware. This is probably something that we need to create in the root of our directory. And we already have a middleware file, and I think we'll leave it where it is. But let's use the TubeGenius. Let's do middleware, and we'll do usage.ts. I don't know if this is correct. Absolutely no idea. Because the last time I implemented the payment integration was in Cursor, I could kind of wobble myself through it, if that makes sense. So we have the components and we need a billing folder with the upgrade modal. Upgrade modal.tsx, paste that here. So we still have to do the modal implementation. So Windsurf didn't give us that. And we also need to rename the subscription store, so to resolve this issue here. And we also have to change the idea generation component. Okay, so but this is something that we will let Windsurf do. So let's use the following prompt. Created all of the files manually, but I haven't written the modal implementation in upgrade modal, and I also haven't connected it to the idea generation button in video card. Please walk me through what we need to do as the next steps to make it work with TubeGenius. I want to slowly roll out this feature, so I have control over each step of the process. Maybe we can add a separate component which is isolated from the rest of the app to test the payment integration, and once everything works, theoretically, we add it to the app. And I've implemented payment integration once, and it was with a mobile app, and this didn't work at all. Okay, so the problem was that, well, it basically destroyed the application. So this is why I want to use a different approach this time. And Windsurf answered, that's a great approach. Let's create an isolated testing environment for the Stripe integration. Here's the plan. First, let's create a new route and page specifically for testing the payment integration. And obviously it can't create the files because I'm in the chat feature, but this is how the test structure will look like. So we have the app, we have a billing test page, and we have the cards where it says loading and error. And then we need to create the test components. And I wanted to create all of the code for me. Yes, I want you to write all of the code for me. Please make sure that it meets our design specification for the current application, and then I will manually go ahead and create the files. So let's go ahead. We need a new folder inside of our app folder. Call it billing test. This will be the route billing test, right? And the page.tsx, we'll copy that if it works. Okay, and we'll paste that here. Yeah, we still do get some errors because, well, we will create these files in a bit. So let's copy that. Let's head over to components, and inside of billing, we create a new folder, call it test. And inside of this folder, we have pricing cards, pricingcards.tsx. We'll paste that here. And we also have yet another file inside of the same folder, and we'll call it subscription test. So let's do subscription test, and we'll paste that here. So what error do we get? No error. Okay. Update the Stripe client. Okay. What do we need to update? Let me see. Stripe client, TypeScript true. So there's literally nothing that we need to update. Update the subscription hook. Use subscription, and well, this kind of looks similar to what we already have, right? No, we add error handling. So let's paste that here. Update the webhook handler, Stripe webhooks. So create these files in their respective locations, add your Stripe ID price to the plans array in pricing cards, add these environment variables to .env. Okay, then the test page will be available at billing test and will be completely isolated from your main application. I've added the environment variables to the .env file. This will probably not work because, well, as you can see here, we get some errors, and I don't know if this is a type error which we can neglect, or this will be responsible for that it doesn't work. But anyway, so this is the test payment integration page, and if we click upgrade now, we get an error, but this again has nothing to do with the application itself. So we get a 500 error. Okay, it says no such price XXX. Okay, so one thing that I've forgotten, now that I think about, is I need to add the price ID to the plans array in pricing cards. So let's scroll down to pricing cards, and here we have to add the price ID. And if we head over to the dashboard, you remember you will find the price ID in your products, and this is the price ID here. So you want to copy that and hard code it in here so that we can test it, save it. And now if we head back over to the application once more, upgrade now. So apparently this seems to work. We still get a lot of errors, but at least the initial redirect worked. Okay, so let me see, what does it say? Failed to fetch. So we'll copy that and then we'll paste that here. So let's say, I don't know if it works, but I get something. I get redirected to the billing page, and I see the subscribe to Pro page where I can add my card information, but I also get a lot of errors. So this is what I see in the terminal, and you want to paste that here. And we also want to paste all of this, right? Here's the console errors from the browser. Paste that, and while this is loading, let's try if we can enter anything. So you can enter dummy data, which is 424242 for basically all of the card information, and we'll do, I don't know, 254242, and let's do subscribe with obligation to pay. So something happened. We get redirected to the app, and if we have a look, Stripe dashboard, let's see, so under customers, we do get something, succeed. So this works. And let's have a look at the explanation. Damn, this was a long error message. I see the issues. There are a few problems we need to fix. The 404 errors for API Stripe subscription indicates we need to create this API endpoint. The error blocked by client errors are likely from an ad blocker blocking Stripe's analytics. These can be safely ignored. We need to implement proper error handling for the subscription endpoint. Let's fix these issues one by one. Before I make these changes, I will again copy all of this. So before I actually make the changes, I tried to make a payment with Stripe's dummy data, and it was successful. So I get redirected to the application page after paying the money. I get redirected to the ngrok URL, so I can't see anything really, but the redirection works. The customer is also created inside of the Stripe dashboard with a working subscription. Here's the console log, the terminal logs, after. So maybe there's something wrong with the webhook. So it says WebSocket connection to blah, 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 failed. Whatever that means, I have absolutely no idea. I understand that you've successfully tested the Stripe payment integration and the payment flow works up to the point of the customer creation in Stripe. However, there seems to be an issue with the redirect URL handling after successful payment. Let me help you fix this. First, let me examine the current redirect handling in pricing cards. Then we search the code base. But I wonder if I do need to change all of those different files. So let me see, add a helper function for the absolute URLs. I have absolutely no idea what this means. Create the checkout API endpoint. We don't have this yet, right? So API Stripe checkout route. I wonder if we need this. I see the issue. The problem is with the redirect URL handling after successful payment. Currently in the create checkout session function, we are redirecting to billing success true, but this route doesn't exist in your application. We need to update the success URL to redirect to billing test success true, since that's where your test page is located. So give me a preview. I see. Okay. Now let's also update the billing test page to handle the URL parameters and show appropriate messages to the user. Okay, yeah. Whatever you tell me, Windsurf. So let's do that again. We need the URL. So let me make this a bit smaller. Copy that. No, not as HTML. Paste that here. We go to billing test, was it? I believe, right? Okay, yeah. Billing test. So we need to delete this. Also, why do we get an error here? Sometimes I don't get it. So I probably have to log in first, right? The question is if this works, because we probably have to do one more thing, and this is go to .env and where is it? So the sign-in URL is probably this now, right? Let's see. Because it violates the following content security policy directive. Okay, yeah, I want to try this, but unfortunately I have to log into the account again and Clerk won't let me because I get the following error. So let's do preview. Apparently it's as simple as that. We probably have to restart the development server. Okay, great. So let's try this. Yes, continue. Now we should be able to go to test billing or billing test. I don't know. What's it called? Billing test. Test. So do we get some errors? Nope. So let me quickly delete this, reload. So we probably something else that we need to add to the next config file. So let me quickly copy that. First we'll want to click upgrade now. So we get redirected. Great, so this worked. And now when I try to access billing/test route, I get the following errors in the console. Damn, I know 61 errors. What the fuck? I wonder how many requests I have left. 65. Huh. Okay, we'll see if this works. Create an API endpoint that fetches the user's subscription status from the database at the worker src. Okay. First, create a new file. App API Stripe subscription. App API Stripe subscription. So new folder. And we'll do copy that. We need to import it from server. Update your next.js config file. Okay, yeah. Let me do this. Next.config. We'll paste that. We'll save this. Let's go back. Can we go back? No. Now that we finished the test environment, I think we can go ahead and ask Windsurf to add this to the actual application. So I told it, now that the test route is working, do you think we could go ahead and try implementing it for the actual application? We need to do a few things. Can you please propose a plan and have a look at the to-dos MD and compare it with what we need to do in order to link the payment integration to our application? Now, as you can see, it actually went ahead, analyzed the code base as a whole, and now the next step in the database schema are the database schema updates, although we already have those, right? So it kind of overlooked the schema.prisma file, and this is why I went ahead and told it to check schema.prisma once more. And then the answer was that, well, we in fact already have all of the necessary data models that we need, and we should now go ahead and implement the logic to track the limit and generations using free generations used, the free generations used field in the database. So we also need to create a few components, right? But this shouldn't be a big deal. We can always let Windsurf generate those. So yeah, sounds good to implement the tracking logic. Please walk me through what we need to do. And this is the critical point, right? I don't want to break the application. So, well, I will probably do another git add and git commit so that they can always revert back to this branch, right? So here's what we need to do. I'll propose the changes to the API ideas generate route. First, we need to expand the user query to include subscription and generation information, add logic to check and enforce generation limits, update the generation count after successful idea generation. And as you can see, those are quite some changes that we need to make. 82 lines, or 82 insertions, I should say. I mean, there's no way around it, right? We'll just have to do it. So let's do preview. You can see that we first get the database user ID that corresponds to the Clerk user ID, and then we try to determine if the free tier limit was already reached. So in my case, that's not the case. Okay, so free generations used is at 0. I'm a bit afraid, guys, really, because I don't know if this will work. So prevent free users from generating more than 3 ideas, track paid users generation limits, maintain accurate usage counts. So I think what we will do now is we'll test this feature to see if it works. So maybe let's try this one. We'll do ideas and let's see if we get something. So apparently this worked. And the question is, if we switch back over to the database, we can't see anything. So we still have the free generations used at 0. That's great. But now I've tested the new feature by generating some ideas, but the number of free generations used is not increased in the database. So could you go ahead and implement this as a next step? Or before you implement this, please propose a plan what we should do as a next step so that I can follow it. So Windsurf made some more changes to the actual generation route. And as you can see, we are now checking whether the generation limit is true and also if the subscription status is free. Now, this doesn't work. I mean, I can generate the titles, but the problem with that is that inside of the database, the subscription status is inactive, right? And if you remember, I told you we probably have to change this. So I will quickly do this. I will change this to free. And now if we once again go to the dashboard and we'll, I don't know, maybe let's just use those here, do ideas generation, and let's see what we get. You can see that the updated free generations count now is 1 and the final user state is 1. And if we head back over to the database and we wait for the refresh, so let me see. Has Windsurf already added this? Yes. As you can see, we now have free generations used 1, which is awesome. And now we can basically go ahead and tell Windsurf that this worked. Okay, so this is great because it worked. Now when I generate ideas, the free generations count is increased by 1. And it's also displayed in the database. So now that the generation counting is working, we should focus on implementing the UI feedback to show users their remaining generations and prompt them to upgrade when needed. Here's what we should do next. Let me check the current video to card implementation. Okay, yeah, so it would actually be pretty dope to have an indicator somewhere where it says, okay, free generations, 1 of 2, 2 of 3, whatever. And let me see what Windsurf comes up with. So first, let's update the video card to handle new error responses and show the upgrade modal. So first of all, I want to do another git add, right? Let's have a look at the code preview for the video card. So we'll do quite a lot. Again, we delete the generate ideas thing. So I wonder if this still works afterwards. Well, I think we just restructure this a bit. So let's do apply. And now let's enhance the upgrade modal to show the remaining generations. Okay, so we'll do preview and also apply. Finally, let's create a subscription store to manage the state. We already have a subscription store, don't we? Use subscription store, we already have this. So if we click preview, it should use the already existing store. And again, we'll do apply, we'll do accept. And we probably broke our application. So, well, let's try this one more time. Maybe with this one. Let's do ideas. So the subscription count is now 2. And I wonder what happens if I do it one more time. So let's do ideas. Do we check for bigger or equal to 3? So now we have it at 3. And now if I do it one more time, we should get, damn, this looks awesome. You have 3 generations remaining. So apparently this is not correct, right? It should say you have 3 generations remaining. But other than that, what happens if we click to upgrade to Pro? Probably nothing, because Windsurf hasn't connected anything to it. But let's try it. Yeah, okay, nothing happens. But this is awesome. Okay, so we have to do a few things. If I click upgrade to Pro, let me see, let me mark this. Yeah, okay, so this is the error that we get. Great, this works. Now, when I've reached 3 free searches, I get an upgrade modal. However, the upgrade modal says you have 3 generations remaining, so we probably have to change the wording there. And when I click on the upgrade to Pro button, I get the following terminal message. So the remaining generations count is incorrect because we haven't properly initialized the store with the user's current count. The Stripe checkout is failing because we haven't specified the price information. Okay, we probably have to add this manually. So the upgrade modal, first let's update the upgrade modal to pass the correct price ID. Yes, and we need this. Okay, let's grab this. We have to create a new environment variable. I'll put it here. And we already have the price ID, right? Because we added it to the test component. So let me quickly grab it if I can find it. I've added the price ID to the environment variables, but now we need to initialize the subscription store with the user's current count. So we need to fetch this when the app loads. Let's create the layout component to handle this. Okay, so you want to create a new subscription provider component, and we'll do this in providers. We'll call this subscription provider.tsx. Okay, I've added the price ID to the environment variable file, and I also created and we'll call it subscription provider. Please give me the code for it. So meanwhile, we have to see the modal. Where is it here? The upgrade modal. And we need to, okay, it already changed this. And we probably have to call this, I think it's like so, right? I don't know, maybe. So let's see, if we click on ideas, this should still work somehow. The problem is that we're still sending the request, right? No, we don't. But we still have to change the wording for the subscription modal. Let's see. So we'll do preview for this and we'll do apply. And now we need to wrap our layout in the provider. So, I mean, you already know this, right? We've done this for the Clerk provider and also for the query provider. This is where I will do it off camera. And then I will get back at you with the next step. Before we jump into the code and I show you how I was able to make it work with Windsurf, I thought it would be a good idea to get an understanding of how the subscription flow actually works, right? Because when I was trying to implement this, I was, I don't know, losing some hair about it. As you can see, my hairline is already receding. This is part of the reason. So let's look at the user. We have a user who lands on our application page or on the landing page, Tube Genius, right? Then he decides to sign up, and after that, he is added to the database as a free user, and he has the following perks. So he can generate ideas 5 times. After that, once he exceeds this quota, he is hit with a modal which says subscribe. And then he has the option of either clicking cancel or subscribe. After that, he will be redirected. At the same time, the user enters his payment information and then clicks buy, first he is redirected to TubeGenius and is now, I don't know, maybe we have some stars around it to show that's now, because paid users are always better than free users. I'm sorry. And he has now unlimited use of the app, At least that's the idea, right? So far, so good. What else do we need to understand? I mean, those are just some 4 small steps, but actually what's happening under the hood is quite complex. The first step before the user is actually redirected to Stripe is that the app logic checks for free generations left. There's a field in the database which says, okay, free generations, and with each generation the user is using, we add 1 to it, right? Then he sees the banner, he clicks the banner, redirect to Stripe. Then he goes through the sign up flow in Stripe where he enters information, credit card information, and also his name and so on. And once this is done, Stripe creates a customer in dashboard. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the payment integration solution, and then I walk you through the process that I went through. Inside of our Stripe dashboard, you can see that I currently don't have a customer. We switch back to the application and then we head back over to the dashboard. I'm already logged in, I believe. Okay, so if we switch back to the database, you can see that this is the current user that I'm logged in with, right? So right now we don't have any subscription inside of the subscriptions table. And let's do the following. You can also see that right now I've already used up my free generations for the idea generation. If I now search for a keyword, for example, fries, and I click on, I don't know, a short, maybe this one, I want to generate new title ideas, you can see that it says you've used all your free generations. Upgrade to Pro for unlimited idea generation. And if I click Upgrade to Pro inside of the terminal, that I get a bunch of metadata from Stripe, right? I am also redirected to Stripe's checkout, and now all I need to do is use some dummy data. And now if I click subscribe with obligation to pay, the webhook is firing. It takes a few seconds to propagate, but here you can see we received a body and we successfully constructed the event. We have a new status for the user inside of our database, which says now Pro. So if we head back over here, you see we are redirected to the dashboard. If I have a look at Stripe's customer database, we can now see the new user, which says Pro subscription with monthly billing. And if we switch back to the database and wait for the refresh, the subscription status is now set to Pro. And we also find the subscription inside of the subscriptions table, as you can see here, with the correct subscription ID, the customer ID, and we can easily verify this. So this is CUS_RZ. And if we switch back here, you can see CUS_RZ and it ends with V8. So this is correct. The way I was able to solve this, unfortunately, again, I won't be able to show you the complete process because actually I had to do a little bit of back and forth until I was able to make it work. But this was mainly because my dumbass wasn't paying attention to the things that Windsurf did, right? Because those were small changes. I had to add the webhook to Stripe. For whatever reason, I used the HTTP version and not the HTTPS version. So if you have a look at, let me show you. So this is the current live URL of our application, right? The ngrok-free app URL. And for some reason, I used the HTTP version, and this would throw an error inside of Stripe because apparently if you want to pay something with Stripe, you need HTTPS, right? So that your connection is secure. And how this would work is in the following way. Let me scroll down a bit. So first of all, we had to create a bunch of endpoints, right? So we had to create the Stripe subscription route to check the subscription status. Then we had to create a webhook route, which essentially handles the Stripe webhook events that we've created inside of the Stripe dashboard. If you can remember, if we go to webhooks and events, those are our events, right? So customer subscription created, deleted, updated, invoice paid, and invoice payment failed. For this, we need the webhook route. Then we also had to create the upgrade modal, and this is what the user sees before he gets redirected to Stripe, right? The small window that pops up where it says you have 0 generations remaining. Then we also had to create a hook. This hook is responsible for managing the subscription state. Then we also had to create the Stripe client, which essentially communicates with the Stripe API. And as you can see here, I changed the API version to the current one, because if you remember a few minutes ago, this was 2023 something, and this is now the correct up-to-date API version. We also had to create a file called actions.ts, and those are the different server actions that we need Stripe to do, right? So create the checkout session so that we can be redirected to the checkout page, and also fetching the correct user data so that we can link the subscription inside of Stripe to our database and essentially connect it to the correct user inside of Supabase. As you can see here, first create a customer if they don't exist. So this is in Stripe. We check if we have a customer linked to this specific ID. If not, we create it, and then we create the checkout session and essentially log all of the different steps inside of the terminal. This is essentially what you see here, just to double check if everything is working correctly. And then we also use the subscription store, which essentially handles the global subscription state. Now, this you don't really see in the application because I haven't added an indicator inside of the user settings or something. So there's no notification or no way of the user checking his pro status. Again, this is just a demo, right? I just wanted to show you what's possible. And here are essentially the different steps. So we set up the Stripe configuration. This is like setting up your payment terminal at a store. We need the Stripe account, the API keys, the webhook secret. So this is everything that we've already done so far. And after that, we have to create the server actions that I just explained to you. Then we need to create a subscription hook. And as you can see, this is like preparing the cash register for a transaction. And then we also have to have a back office person, as you can see here, who processes the payments and updates the records. And this is essentially the webhooks route that we're using. And here's the complete flow. So the user starts for free with 5 limited generations. This status is stored in the database. The user clicks upgrade. The upgrade modal shows, calls the use subscription checkout hook, creates the Stripe checkout. Then we go through the payment process, and after the payment, Stripe sends the webhook. The server updates the database. So this is the use subscription hook, right? Where is it? Here. And if we have a look at the webhook, let me see. This is here. Now, as you can see, we are handling the rate, or we are handling the date of the subscription hook inside of here. And for the ongoing usage, React Query checks the status. So whenever the user tries to generate an idea, React Query checks for the correct user status, which has to be pro inside of the database. Where is this? I think. So React Query checks the status. It fetches this route, API Stripe subscription. And if we have a look at this route, it's making a request to the database where we, first of all, try to find the user, or we throw an error when no user was found. And then we return the subscription status, the free generations used, and the subscription. And if we compare this to the database, you can see that we have the, let me switch back to the users. We have the subscription status. So this has to be pro for the flow to be, well, executed. And the other things that we had to update was the database schema, because we had to create a subscription table, right, with the corresponding data that we get from Stripe, like the ID, user ID, Stripe customer ID, and so on. And that's basically it. Now, I would have loved to show you this as a linear process of me actually going through the prompts and showing you how to do it. But to be honest, it wasn't as linear as I expected. But again, the reason for that was mostly me not paying attention for what Windsurf did. I think in total it took like, I'd say 45 minutes to resolve this issue, but I probably could have done it in like 20 minutes if I properly double checked Windsurf's work. And again, if this is the only thing that you learn from this video, it's don't trust AI coding tools. You always have to double check their work and to understand what is actually happening. And even with the proper documentation, right? You can read the steps and you can understand them conceptually, but understanding how to actually write the code and what you need to do programmatically so that these things can work is a totally different beast. And I've said it multiple times in this video. I say it one more time. The documentation is great to keep track of what you're doing and to get an understanding of what you want to build, but it's more for yourself than for the AI coding tools, so to speak, because you learn a lot about the architecture of the software that you want to build if you properly plan it out on the piece of paper with the help of AI tools, right? This brings us to the end of this video, to be honest, because we now have a fully working, I wouldn't call it vidIQ clone, because actually the functionality is quite different from vidIQ, right? We can still search for videos, we can get the transcript, and we can generate new title ideas. But in addition to that, we can also chat with a LLM, which is DeepSeek, about the video and about the generated title ideas, which is pretty neat. We can say something like, generate a 30-word script. Well, let's do like 100-word script because it's not big enough. Generate a 100-word script for the first video idea title. And then you can hit send. It will take a couple of seconds until you receive an answer. DeepSeek will get back at you with the correct script. Opening shot, sizzling fries in a fryer, close-up of golden crispy fries. And well, that's basically it. So I hope you gained a little bit of value from this video. And other than that, I'll see you in the next one.